Hello. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another episode of Lorebeards. We're back. And today's gonna be a nice kind of chill but interesting stream.
I, of course, laugh demonically because whenever we are reviewing over products, you are inevitably going to find me doing what I can't help myself but do, and that is criticize editing, layout, and similar. That being the case, because I don't want to be that guy today, I'm only going to bring it up once. So when I bring it up, I'm going to bring it up and I'll explain why it really annoys me, but in general, I think I would rather leave all the negativity to another stream. Although, I'll be honest, I do believe that there is a good excuse for a lot of negativity concerning the Arcane Journals if you want to be negative about them. And I kind of don't, because I'm just really happy that we're getting more exciting extra details for the Warhammer world, and they are expressing it in ways, in some cases, that I just simply didn't expect. Now, that won't be the case for the Westerland book, which, as far as I'm concerned, largely landed exactly where I expected. But the Cathayan book, it dropped a couple of doozies that I didn't expect, to the point that my old Lawhammer game has now got a problem that it needs to figure out, because it completely pitches a bit of lore in a way that I didn't expect, meaning that my Lawhammer campaign now needs to either backtrack, which it won't, or it's going to have to come up with an alternate reason why certain things have happened, which I've already done.
Yeah. For this one, for those that have been kind of like following with the old world, me and Andy have stayed mostly caught up. Obviously, there's been 2 books that have released since the last time we really talked a lot about it, which Razing of the Westerland and Breaching of the Great Bastion. We're gonna start here in just a minute with the Razing of the Westerland, because it's fine. It's kind of more it's a bit of a nothing burger. It's totally fine. It's totally reasonable. It's very much we need to put out new Marauder models. Here's a book to justify it.
Yeah, totally.
Because if you look at it from the perspective of like the book that came out before it, which was the Dawn of the Storm Dragon, it doesn't actually advance the narrative at all. It's kind of during the breaching of the Storm Dragon, the Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
The Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
What was old Norska up to? And the answer was getting the shit kicked out of them, basically. And then they just kind of wandered off to talk about the path to glory, which is fine, because we did get those new Marauder models and they are gorgeous. And this book does, I think, do a not terrible job of giving lore that people that are new to the setting probably have never seen before, which is delving a bit more into like some of the monogod stuff. And it basically just has a cute little story where, well, we'll get into it.
Yeah, much like we've done with our previous ones, we'll sort of go through the books in order, in that we'll take it chunk by chunk by chunk. We'll spend, I think, a lot more time on the Cathayan book, because it's offering more new material than the Marauder book is, where the Marauder book is largely retreading material that we kind of know and just pitching it in a slightly different way. I'm also going to leave most of my deep dissatisfaction in terms of layout choices and editing choices just to the Cathay book at the beginning. I'll just make one and say, be aware of this one, and then just spread it around the book if you wish, because there's several examples all over the place. So I'm being good. This time. Also, for those of you who have turned up expecting us to review the rules, that is not what we're here to do today. We are discussing the lore and the lore only. So this is all the snippets and pieces of historical detail, location detail, and character detail, and how it may or may not have changed from previous versions of what Warhammer has offered.
Yeah, we're not a rules review channel.
No, we're not doing that nonsense. We're just getting stuck in with the black and white of the words and what it offers for the overall setting as a whole.
Yeah, I do know some lovely channels that keep up with that. It looks like
there is. So before we begin, I have 2 things I'd like to say. The first one is utterly unrelated to the stream, and it's just happy birthday, Mum. I know my mum isn't going to watch this, or at least it's super unlikely she's ever going to watch this, unless I die tomorrow, and this is my last ever public appearance, it's enormously unlikely she'll ever see it. But if that does happen, and this is bizarrely foreshadowing a terrible and awful demise tomorrow, happy birthday, Mum. I've had a lovely day with her, and it's nice to be over on this side having a chat with you all about good old Warhammer geeky stuff.
Yeah, I did make sure to knock on wood 3 times just to be safe.
Yeah, quite. Because, that'll work. So that's number 1. And number 2 is directly related to this stream and going against what I normally do, where we do some sort of bizarre intro and then we finish with some sort of outro where we sum up everything. That's not really what today's about. These are Tuesday streams where we just sort of dive into a topic and see where it goes. I'm going to do the opposite of what I normally do and start off with an overall review. And that is, I kind of like the Westerland book, I suppose, maybe, sorta. It was fine. It did exactly what it needed to do. It was neither exciting nor particularly demanding. It did exactly what it needed to do. And if you happen to be out there thinking about buying a book about Chaos lore, I would argue this is not the one for you, but it does have quite a lot of quick summaries that you might find interesting. By comparison, the Cathay book offers lots of cool, new, interesting bits and pieces, and also has some pretty gorgeous new pieces of art that I do think are worth having a look at if you have any interest in Cathay at all, particularly when you look at the Winds of Magic and how they're presented in there, which is super cool. It has a lovely timeline, some of which gave me a surprise. I'll get to that when we get there. And it dives into quite a bit of interesting detail, but again, much as is often the case with most Cathayan sources we've had so far, it very much presents Cathay as perfect, and the story it tells is the story of the dragons. It's not a story of the administrators. They're all nameless individuals who don't matter. This is the story of the dragons being reiterated again and again in a slightly different way. And if you're someone who's not that interested in the Cathayan dragons and are more interested in the complete society of Cathay and how it works, you get lots of snippets about it. Lots of fun little details about how, for example, they build their armies and their war hosts and how they move off. But it's still, at heart, a story of dragons. And I would also add, when we go into some of the detail and review how they express it, sometimes slightly nonsensical. But don't look at it too hard. If you squint your eyes, it's beautiful and super fun. But if you're looking for a Warhammer version of China, this is obviously it, I suppose, but it is not what many expect for a Warhammer version of China, because it is still presented with God voice, an almost perfect society of humans with the dragons sitting at the top. And that, for all it sort of undermines it with a couple of paragraphs here or there, is still the overall position it has. And if that bugs you, I wouldn't recommend looking at this one too deeply.
Yeah, we'll get into it in depth, but it is so bizarre reading the 3 Cathay books that have come out of that. It almost feels like someone walked up to the main writing guy and was like, okay, you can't say anything bad about Cathay. But when you do,
you have to couch it very carefully.
Yeah, but when you read it, you go, okay, obviously this is all bullshit, because I can see cracks where this is obviously not true of what you're saying, but for some reason they're God voicing it like that, and I don't know why. I don't know if they're like, well, we got to sell to a Chinese audience, so we have to make it where China is the ultimate good guy. It's like that has so many concerning undertones, but okay, whatever, guys.
Yeah, I find it an odd read, and this is from someone who has read books from pretty much, in fact, I have read every book from every edition of Warhammer, and it stands out amongst all of those as presented differently. And even when you move over to the other arcane journals, you tend to find that they're all just a bit grubbier. They're all just a little bit messier. But when you move over to Grand Cathay, they sort of break and they go, you know how Warhammer has everybody fighting each other? Yeah, in Grand Cathay, they don't. They just don't. They just don't. They're in harmony, man. Except and the only threats that they really have is from the outside, and that's it. And the disharmony that the dragons get when they bicker, it's all about the problems it causes for them dealing with outsiders, not for anything that could happen in one of the largest areas in the Warhammer world. It's really weird, to the point that you got to start questioning as to why they're choosing to do it this way. Is it just that they're approaching the Chinese market and wanting to say that their version of Cathay is great? If so, then, well, that's what we have. Is it bad writing? Is it blindly accepting a version as presented in Total War and not thinking too much about it? There's lots of different answers to these questions, and I honestly don't know the correct one, nor do I really wish to speculate too deeply. But I can say that Cathay is presented in a very different way to almost everywhere else in the Warhammer world. Even the most devout and most together parts of the Warhammer world are not presented as cleanly as Cathay is. Even the dwarves look like they're more likely to break into outright war with each other than the Cathayans are the way it's presented, where it quite literally states again and again, oh, they have no problems with war. It's an almost bucolic lifestyle. It's it's just a bit weird. And then they undermine it all by saying cults and the dragons bicker and politics, but then blankly, flat out deny that with the next set of statements that they use. It's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting way to present it.
Yeah, and I said this about the first book. I said this about the second book, and I'm going to say about the third book. It almost feels like there's two authors that are arguing in each of the books. And it almost, in a funny way, it unintentionally reminds me a lot of the Liber Chaotica, where if you've ever read that book, the book is presented by a character who is very good guy coded, but in all of the margins, there's a bunch of ink written by a secondary character who's talking about how everything he's saying is lies and it's all bullshit. It feels like that, except for both characters are speaking in God voice, so they shouldn't be arguing, but they are, and it's the whole thing's very strange.
Yeah, Lord Vorn's just made a comment, which we'll get to when we do our first batch of super chats. But I think the reading that you have, Lord Vorn, which we're going to get to, is abjectly not the reading that the book has. It's one that we have to impose upon it as readers to make sense of the writing as it currently stands. But we'll get to that particular comment in a moment, because I agree with you, Lord Vorn. It's a good way of parsing the book and the information that it offers.
Speaking of which, let's get into those.
Let's get into our first super chats, and once we've done those, we'll dive into the first of the book. It's the Ravaging, isn't it? Just make sure I get this. The Razing of Westerland, and we'll have a quick chat about that one.
Yep. Bava, now we have to puzzle out who destroyed the wall. No, we don't. The book states it pretty explicitly, but okay. Who hates the walls? Who hates No, not the walls, just walls in general. Who hates dragons? Who hates
just walls?
Structures? Who hates air? Fishman did it.
I think it's almost certainly the case by a foot. I think the Fishmen are responsible for all of the woes that the Empire of Grand Cathay suffers from.
Yep. That's why they have to be so secretive about it. Use God voice saying that there's nothing wrong. Is because it's all Fishmen. Sean Schultz, is that a Longbeard talking or Andy talking?
Both.
They're the same image. Prodaki played my first old world tourney last week as Bretonia. Got wrecked but had fun. Thanks for keeping the spirit of Warhammer Fantasy alive. Cheers. Well, thank you so much, Prodaki.
I'm super glad that you're enjoying the game as well. I'm seriously tempted to get together a force just because I like Warhammer. That's it.
If the rumors, so it's actually kind of appropriate that me and Andy are doing this week because Adepticon is next week. And it's like a 2-hour show that's gonna. I think a good hour of that is probably going to be the new 40K edition.
40K,
but
it will.
But there's supposed to be some pretty big old world reveals as well. If the rumors are true that they're finally doing a starter box, which we don't actually have, which a proper starter box is X Army versus X Army.
And rules.
Yes, and rules, which Fantasy does not have. Right now, you can only pick up, the very first thing we got was a Tomb King box and a Bretonia box, but they weren't
both
versus, they were separate boxes.
Yep.
And didn't come with any supplies for new players.
And might I just say one more time, it did come with some supplies. It came with dice, and my dice were marked as 40k dice. In fact, that's not true. It's 30k dice. Okay, marked in a little bag of 30k dice, and you're like, dudes,
you can
seriously,
tell how not hard they were trying right at the start.
Yeah, that's uncool.
They had. It just really feels like they had such.
You can see that on the unboxing that I did over in Lawhammer, because I did an unboxing of that one, and I pulled it out and I looked at it and went, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, but anyway, So there have been quite a few rumors that we might be getting a Wood Elves versus Tomb Kings box, which is a very cool proposal. And if that's true, and B, it's actually full of a bunch of new minis for both of them, I might have to start playing in person again.
I may have to as well. My biggest impediment on my side is I literally can't be arsed painting them for two reasons. One, I'm old. Two, my eyesight is rubbish now in comparison to what it used to be. These are bifocals because I'm old. And the idea of putting on big goggles just so that I can paint a miniature just makes me go, I don't want to do that. So if anyone out there happens to be an absolutely amazing painter and wants to do an entire army for me, do make sure you reach out in Discord.
I love the idea of Andy looking like the Empire engineer art where they've just got like the multi giant goggle lenses.
I'll bring this one up just because I have to. I'm 50 now, which is approximately 30 years older than I feel.
Lord Vorn. I read it through the prism of Cathayan propaganda. There is no disharmony in Grand Cathay. So Andy mentioned this earlier, and I want to add on to it with a little anecdote. I did a stream not that long ago where I was playing with a couple of folks who are like, Pancreas was there, but we also had like this really prominent 40K tuber person online guy named Bricky, who's a very, very big deal in the 40K online community. He doesn't work for Games Workshop. He's just heavily associated with 40K. And when we were talking, one of the things he said, because he does his own little podcast thing called like the Adeptus Ridiculous, I think, which is a very fun, cute podcast where they are kind of like stumbling their way through like learning about different things in fantasy and all sorts of other stuff. And one of the things he said that put me in kind of a surprisingly weird mental spot was he said something along the lines of like, oh, it's really interesting reading old world lore because unlike 40K, there's actual definitive good guys. And my initial response, I quite literally out loud went, I don't know if I would say that. He goes, well, that's how the book presents it. And the thing that a part of my brain had to realize was oh yeah, he's right.
Yep, he's right. And I can only but agree. The current Warhammer writing from the Arcane Journals is very much almost good guy stroke bad guy coded. And it could not be more clear with the Cathayan book. And whilst we can come in and take it from the very angle you put, Lord Vorn, and say, hey, that would make it make more sense. It's not how it's presented. And if we go to other army lists from Warhammer, say, for example, the 6th edition, which was almost a reimagining of all of Warhammer after the Hero Hammer of 4th and 5th edition. They basically regrounded everything again. And throughout their army list, you often found letters and in-character missives and discussions from characters from their perspective in extra boxes at the backs of those books. And that's where you got all your propaganda version of what was and what wasn't. Take, for example, the Dark Elves and how they presented the High Elves. And they presented themselves as 100% the good guys. They were the good guys. The High Elves were evil and wrong. And that's how they perceived it. And that's cool. The in-character version of the lore was really good. That is not how the old world presents it. It's all presented in nice, clean little columns where it says, this is what it is. This is the next thing that is. And also, this is the next thing that is. And do they sometimes disagree with each other? Yes. Yeah, and that makes it an interesting read.
Yeah, like, despite everything we just said, I do feel 100% confident I could give a whole presentation about how the book proves that it is either, like Andy said earlier, that it is either just bad writing or that it is propaganda, because it's the only way to make it not bad writing. But the real answer is that it's kind of just bad writing, which I don't like saying because I like the lore that it's presenting. I just don't like the tone in which it's doing it.
Yeah. So, Lord Vorn, I appreciate your view, and it is the view that makes the books much more palatable, and it also makes them, I'd argue, more interesting, but it is not how they're presented.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
I do have one thing to bring up just on the smaller side. Not on Twitch. We are on Twitch. I just checked it. We are definitely up today. So if you want to go check Twitch, it should be there.
Yeah, we had to make a new Twitch account, so it's Lorebeards Twitch, not just Lorebeards. So you might be on the old one. Is the issue there? Also, follow us on Lorebeards Twitch. We would appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, heck, if you're watching right now and you haven't pressed subscribe yet, please do so. Become our follower, subscribe to our channel, do whatever it is that you happen to do over on whichever channel you're watching just now, because we need more of you folks, because that would be awesome.
Slushy Raccoon had an amusing thought of Yin Yin moonlighting as a pirate and then being tasked to kill her pirate persona. That is hilarious. That would genuinely be one of the funniest short stories that someone could make about Yin Yin.
You can imagine the other dragons hearing reports of it and her just sitting there going, oh yeah, we'll need to sort that one.
Which, to be fair, I really like the way she's portrayed in the new book. Which we'll get to that. She is very much what I hope she would be, and I'm very excited to see more of her.
Yep, ditto.
Camp, God, I want a reprint of a collector's edition Liber Chaotica. I'm starving for fantasy and AOS and universe books. Yeah, Games Workshop doesn't like to do those very much anymore, which sucks because all of them were great.
Yeah, agreed. It's a shame.
Donovan, on the subject of Cathay being presented so perfectly, recently Ryan... sorry, Donovan, I didn't mean to snipe your super chat there. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Skara, favorite dragon kid. I love my girl failure Yin. Personally, I'm still a pretty big Miao Ying stan, though I like them all for very different reasons. I like them all a lot for very different reasons.
So do I. It's easy to be down on the Dragon Kids if you are someone who didn't play Total War and you have watched the arrival of Cathay and its perfect version of what society is, and these dragons that are these overwhelming, ridiculously overpowered creatures that are ruling over it all. But I kind of love them, and I kind of love their soap opera, and I don't think that it is bringing something negative to the setting. I think it's a big positive. And I think each of them have got fun characters. I really want to also call out Yin Yang because I think she's great and I would really like to say she's my favorite, but we don't have enough about her for me to actually say that with any definitive statements, because I'm not sure girl failure is at all correct to describe her. It's just she's different to the other dragons with a different set of priorities. And that in and of itself makes her an interesting character for me. But you could say the same thing for each of the dragons because they all have their own personality quirks, which makes them a little bit too much in one area or another. And I think all of them are failures. Every single last one of them in their own unique ways. And Miao Ying is as bad as her because she's far too strict. She's far too on the nose. She's far too much. And whilst that may bring a certain amount of loyalty from some, it will bring a great deal of disharmony from others and will open up the doors for cultists. And given that she's on the North Wall, where you don't want any cultists, she is arguably one of the most dangerous dragons to place there. And I think that's kind of great. And I would really like to see those depths mined a little with extra stories and smaller sides inside the Arcane Journals. But the Arcane Journals don't do that. They tend to just lapse into quick stereotype and everybody's great at what they do. And oh yeah, the dragons...
You mean the peasants aren't all completely fanatically loyal and happy to die in the name
they
of the
all
dragons?
Are. Every single last one of them.
Without any concern whatsoever? Like the
so I'm broadly a fan of all of them. I would like to say that Yin Yang's my favorite, but I'm pretty sure that the more they write about her, the less that's going to be the case. I've got a horrible feeling they may make her almost the butt of the joke rather than a reinforcement that all of the dragons are by nature flawed. And I think that makes them more fun.
And then last thing here, Diblam, I want human Cathay. I want to see how the chaos influence is specifically felt there. I want to see how the no gods policy affects this. GW, give us we do need much more human perspective content, which is sorely lacking at the moment.
It is. These are the dragon books. And I think it's arguably the weakest part of the Cathayan representation, given that they are, in the greater scheme of Cathayan, what we see on the battlefield, massively in the minority. Indeed, many Cathayan armies won't even have a dragon. So much focus upon them throughout the course of all of it takes away, in some respects, the individuality of what your different Cathayan armies can be. What are my various ministers and administrators and various other cool figures that I'm going to be bringing to the battlefield? My generals. Who are they? How could they manifest? What do they do? What are they fighting against? How is this all going? And the answer is almost always, they're under this dragon, rather than actually giving them any unique identity. And that is, for all fun homogenization of Cathay, and basically saying all for one and one for all, so to speak. A little bit musketeer there, which is not quite appropriate, but whatever. I still fear it is an undermining of what would make Cathay great.
Yeah, and I'll say very bluntly, before we're really going to get going, that I think a lot of how I feel about Cathay is very strongly saved by Total War and the staggering amount of lore that comes out of Total War. Because to me, it's not like it's this versus the Arcane Journals. It's more that they're fleshing out the same thing. But Total War seems to be much more focused on like the human perspective and like what everyday people are doing and all of these other little things. Whereas I very much agree with Andy that the books they're just about the Dragon Kids. Which is fine.
Fine.
But I
want a Cathay book.
Yeah, I want to know what's going on in the country. And we get whispers of it. We do get some genuine whispers that I go, oh, that's so cool. I want to know more. And it's like, nah, I'm not gonna tell you more. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna blow through the rest of the. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm gonna get through these. Okay, at 30 minutes, we really gotta start though. Yin Yin doing the Superman thing. Yin Yin just happened to be in the area to get the scoop on the pirate, the Daily Planet. You all know. I just happened to be there on time.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, that's good. Skara, she thinks the High ships are named after her. Andy, she's the girl failure of failures. She probably drowned during the end times because she forgot to fly. Nonsense.
Yeah, and yeah, I would like to. I would like to tackle that with some interesting, deep, and layered writing.
Yeah, I honestly think Yin Yin would be one of the two dragons that would survive. That I think would be the most likely to survive until the very, very end. Because I've talked about this on stream.
Certainly not Lido.
Just to TLDR it. I would say that I think she would be the most likely to realize that Grand Cathay is lost and there are bigger things at stake, and she would be willing to leave to go help others, which would make her very, very different from her siblings, who I think would go down fighting.
Yeah.
Super Orlock. My guess is that the writers are struggling to give Cathay flaws that spring naturally from their society while avoiding the racist generalizations that often frame the decline of Chinese power. I would argue that if that's what they're trying to do, which I don't think it is, but if they were trying to do that, they are falling very much into the trap of Orientalism.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, which is, from a writing perspective, significantly more racist. It's racist, but it's positive racism as opposed to negative racism. You know, it's kind of like it's the idea that presenting Grand Cathay as this perfect, harmonious land where the people they're othered. They're not like humans in the West. They're a different kind of human. It's treating them
special.
Like, yeah,
and spiritual, and at one with the dragons.
Yeah, it treats them like they're a different species as opposed to humans that live in a different part of the world, which is not good. that's not good. That's bad.
And it undermines one of the core aspects of humanity, which is that they are much more susceptible to chaos than everybody else. It's pretty much the story that's told again and again and again in Warhammer, except for in Cathay.
Yeah, which once again, the book turns around and shoots itself in the back of the head by being like, "Oh, there's also giant Zinchian problems in Cathay." You go, well, if Cathay's so perfect, then there shouldn't be any Zinch problems. Where are these Zinch problems coming from? If it's perfect?
Could you give me some examples, please, so I can understand what you mean? You know, some deep, awesome examples, and there isn't any.
Yeah. Brock, It's my 40th birthday today. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy birthday to Brock. Happy birthday to Brock. Happy birthday, dear Brock. Happy birthday to Brock.
Mm-hmm. Captain Magma Pyro. If Cathay had a Chinese zodiac type calendar, would the year of the rat be considered dangerous or a bad omen by Cathayans? Would Skaven mistake it for years of worship? I think there is a cute, fun story you could tell doing that. Yes, because if they had it, which I wouldn't be surprised if they did, they would probably very much take inspiration from the real world one. And I think having a year of the rat that actually has nothing to do with Skaven, but the Skaven think it has to do with them, would allow for some really, really fun storytelling. That would be hilarious. And me and Andy have talked about how not all rats have to do with the Skaven.
Yeah, it's a little bit like saying, if we have a year of the apes, suddenly all the humans they think it's to do with them. It's not. It's to do with apes. Rats aren't Skaven. They just work together a lot. I do think that there could be something cool with this. Should there be a Cathayan Zodiac? Definitely. If I was writing it, this would be a thing that would definitely happen. And it would not be the same as the real world equivalent because it shouldn't be. It's got an entirely different cosmology, entirely different sets of societal norms and rules. And there's also the aspect of the... Without straying into difficult territory here, the spirituality of Warhammer is real, where the spirituality of the real world tends to not be, where it is something that is a compounded set of religious beliefs that have been built up over multiple centuries towards thousands of years for particular cultural reasons. And diving into the cultural reasons for the Cathayans, hitting into the real world impact of the winds of magic and everything else, I think would make for a super interesting and quite different, but somewhat similar version of what a Zodiac could be. I'd be well into doing that.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to put a pause on the ring super chats for just a little bit because we got to get going.
Because we got to get diving into this.
Yeah. So starting with Razing the Westerland, which we're going to get through pretty quick because there's not a lot of super new information in here. It's more of a re-examining of old information. Yep. But it is interesting in its own right for reasons we'll get into. So just to kind of work our way through the book very quickly, the first opening stuff is basically a retelling of much of what happens in the Dawn of the Storm Dragon, which Dawn of the Storm Dragon and the Warriors of Chaos book before that follow the story of the current big bad in the old world, which is Friedel the Chainmaker. And Friedel the Chainmaker basically comes down from Norska. She's a big bad Norscan warlord, and she leads an invasion of the Westerland. And it goes really, really well. Here we get more of the details from their perspective of the town of Hollum gets its shit rocked, and then the Norskins go away, and Hollum goes, "Oh, I guess we should start rebuilding now because they won't be back for a while." Nope, but surprise, they're back immediately. And a
small interruption just to make sure that everybody understands: the Westerland is the wasteland of the end times version of the old world. Just in case you didn't know, Westerland is at this point a part of the empire, the most westerly grand province of the empire. And this is also at the point when the empire is fractured into multiple pieces and just before the place where it heads off into the deep dark ages where the empire completely breaks. So yeah.
Now,
fun.
Yeah, a couple of interesting notes about this. This does dive into a lot of the fun of Friedel, who I do think is a very, very good character for the old world, that she is a Chaos Lord that is trying to expand. She's not trying to destroy the world. She's not trying to burn down the empire necessarily. She is building her own empire in the empire. So Norska is she is a counter-invading force that is actually taking territory of the Empire and taking advantage of the fact that the Empire is very weak in this age because of the Civil War. And this book examines that a bit about, it's more examined in the Dawn of the Storm Dragon, where it explicitly calls out that Marienburg calls for aid and the other parts of the Empire go, Marienburg's kind of getting fucked up. Good. Screw those guys. And we've talked about this on previous streams where we examined Friedel's invasion of how the High Elves are very oddly deliberately not helping. They're only dealing with groups that attack them or their things, but they're not helping the Empire. And the dwarfs are busy because they're dealing with a bunch of greenskin rises. So Marienburg's like, oh shit. And it sends like a mercenary army to Holland, which gets its ass kicked. And the things that I generally like that this book reinforces in the first few pages, where it's literally like 6 pages that focus on Friedel, is that I do like that they're focusing the invasion on a part of the Empire. Well, wasn't the Empire in the era of Karl Franz, but part of the old world that kind of just, for all intents and purposes, didn't exist in many of the later editions of Warhammer. That part of the Westerland north of Marienburg was like just nothing ever happened there. It almost felt like it was nobody must have lived there. But I really like that this book examines that. No, there were tons and tons of people that live out there and still do live out there. But we now have that it's the major front where the old world is. That's where the big fight of first edition is happening. And we get to see a lot of really cool places. We're getting to see a lot of towns and villages that are absolutely annihilated. And then Grand Cathay shows up and they help push Friedel all the way back up to, I think she's pushed all the way back up to Arnau itself in the Dawn of the Sword Dragon. This book,
I have a small thing just to add that I have to add because I can't help myself.
Do it.
So if you get this book and you take a look at the map that's inside it and you take a look at all the locations that are used, there's a couple. This part here, there's a couple of things worth pointing out. Most of the locations that are marked in there come from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, and most of those locations are new. In that, for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which was depicting the year 2511, 2512, 2513, around about there, most of the locations there were not ancient places from several hundred years ago, meaning that they have just basically said, you know, all that stuff that used to exist, it's now been there for centuries. Yeah. Another one, for example, the Wasteland wasn't called the Wasteland at this point in every other book that discusses it, but they've got the Wasteland as a core area sitting north of Marienburg. At this point, the Wasteland gets its name because of what happens to it. Depending on which book you read, the most common tale is before the Great War against Chaos, it gets completely sacked and it becomes the Wasteland. And then when it separates itself later, 100 years after the Great War, it takes on the name the Wasteland as a point of pride, one presumes. It's a stupid thing. They should just call themselves Westerland, but they don't. They call themselves the Wasteland because that's what the very first maps of the old world showed, the Wasteland, which was off towards the edge of the Empire. The stories that he used to justify that were always a bit weak. But yeah, they basically copy paste lots of bits from older maps without any awareness at all of what those locations are. And for someone who's mapped all of this area multiple times, I'm just left with going, most of these places don't exist. And the Midden Moors and the Mirror Moors are the same place, and you've separated them. And you put the Midden Moors in a place that makes no sense at all. There's just loads of bits of this map that deeply contradict not just one, but about 12, 13, 14, 15 other maps that Games Workshop have produced. So they're basically just rewriting all of the geography as is needed for the stories they're telling here.
Yeah, which is not super surprising.
No, it's not.
It's annoying, though. Which, all that to add, it's such a shame because this could have been such a cool acknowledgement of the earlier editions by saying it's the Westerland, but this place will end up becoming the Wasteland. Here's the story of how it becomes the Wasteland.
The Wasteland, exactly. Yeah. It's such an open goal. The goal is there, sitting in front of them, and they run up to it, and they shoot off in a completely the wrong direction, and you're like, oh, no. Oh no! You could have given it a reason.
Goal. What are you doing?
Yeah, and you could have even, if you desperately wanted to have the idea that perhaps there had been attempts throughout the old Westerland to try and reclaim land in a similar fashion to how parts of northwestern Europe were reclaiming land and making great polders and dikes and basically pushing the water back, and then the Wasteland, which comes after the chaos slams through the area, and they're all flooded again, leaving a boggy, horrible land that is really difficult for Marienburg, once it separates itself from the Empire, to ever properly reclaim, giving yourself this big, huge area which is full of isolated, windswept communities that are full of boggy, saline bogs at that as well, meaning that the sea washes through it with its saltiness. So you've got all these brackish bogs, which are just not cool to live in. makes for a super fun setting that's quite different to other parts of the Empire. But no, this wasn't really their concern. They just took all the bits from old maps, put it all on the same map, but didn't really care that some of them were the same locations, and then just went, right, let's go with this.
Yeah. So anyway, there are some elements that if you want to use for your own stuff, there's some very easy massages you could do to make it tie in really, really nicely to older content. If you want this, it's a very brief rehashing. The Dawn of the Storm Dragon goes much heavier into the arrival of Grand Cathay, and they're pushing back Afridol and fighting her armies. But that's basically the first section. From there, we get to the Marauder tribes. I actually quite like this section. It's basically a 4-page situation that dedicates to one of each of the dark gods. But
that's pretty cool.
One of the things the book goes very out of its way to say, which I appreciate, is that the Norskins do not see them as the chaos gods. It goes out of its way to say the Norsemen believe that these are primordial, ancient, totemic spirits that have been in the land much longer than them, and that they offer them forms of protection, but there are times where they are appreciated and times where they are not as much. Like the page where it talks about the Bloodied Hound goes to talk about how a lot of the Norskin tribes, while like I like that it says like, oh, the war between them are frequent and quick to ignite, yet often resolution is just as swift. Often victors being decided through mere duels of champions or grudges settled by exchanges. And they have this whole note about how the followers of Karneth the Hound, a lot of other Norskins during times of relative peace don't like them. Because all they do is fight and fight and fight, and everyone goes, "You need to chill. It is not the time of war." And they're seen as a threat to a lot of the people around. They're people that go too far, which I like that this book doesn't do what I feared it was going to kind of do, which was just paint Norska as everyone here is just warriors of chaos all the time. They just don't wear armor, and the books don't do. This book doesn't do that, and I really appreciate that actually.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like it's back when we were doing the Tome of Corruption for One Fantasy Roleplay Second Edition, there was the discussion as to what to do with Norska. And the general idea at that point was that everyone in Norska was basically falling to chaos. And there was a certain amount of pressure to push back against that for the various Norse factions that had been used in White Dwarf articles and elsewhere that weren't chaos. And the amalgam that was created for the Tome of Corruption drew upon many of the ideas that were put forward inside the Liber Chaotica, the idea of Karneth, the idea of the Hound, the idea of basically what's presented inside this book. And it took some of those, but it also added a dimension that has been lost here, which is that in some of the older versions of Norska, the Chaos Gods are just 4 other gods. And the other Chaos Gods, of which there's multiple, are just other demons and gods that they pay lip service or reverence to, because not to do so is stupid, because they are very real and they are there. It's not like in the Empire where you've got big barriers before you hit the realm of chaos in the far north. It is a part of their life, and many will directly try to appease these great primordial powers just to ensure that they either get benefit or are ignored by their terrible minions. And the further south you go, the less the chaos gods infiltrate all parts of society. And some places it'll be particular demons, and other places it'll be directly the gods, and they've got their own special names throughout the course of all of Norska. Names like Karneth, for example, we dropped into the Tome of Salvation as well in the second edition of Warhammer. So it's pulling on all of that. But the one thing that I think this definitely doesn't include, which is a part of what Norska was being pitched at in the past, is that Ulrich is worshipped up there. Tal is worshipped up there. The other gods are also a core component of their lives. That's sort of just not mentioned or dropped or isn't a thing, but that doesn't mean it's not a thing, because if you often find with the army lists, the arcane journals, they're the top tier stuff. This is the main stuff that you're going to use in an army, but when you drill in with a novel, someone comes along later, you'll find that they'll dive into specifics you don't expect. You might find yourself a Norscan who's worshipping Manan because they're a whaler, for example. And they're moving across the high seas, and they're quite aware of those who are following the Hound or following the Serpent or whatever else, who might be out there, but they're just in a different cultural or religious position to what they may be in. So it's lost some of its diversity, but equally it's drawn a lot upon the older lore, and I think they're not a bad job. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I think, the Hound, they do a great job with. Like, they talk about how, like, in times of peace, they're reviled and hated, but during times of war, they're hailed as champions, and, like, people see them as great heroes and want to be around them because they're going to lead you to victory. Then you get onto the Carrion Crow with Neglin. Neglin, I actually really like his page, because you get, like, a whole thing about how, like, a lot of people turn to him due to wanting to avoid plague and suffering and all this other stuff. But it gives a note how among the Crow's followers, you have many different healers and individuals that know how to tend to the spiritual and physical wounds, and that in times of peace, they go around spreading the word of Neglin by being genuine healers. It's not like they're doing the sinister, like, oh, I'm going to heal you, but I'm secretly giving you a super disease thing. No, they're full on genuinely treating people because they're trying to lure them. Like, say, Neglin gives succor. He's kind and giving, and this is but a taste of what you could have if you come with us. But they don't force the issue, which I like. It gives a very good. Once again, I think they're doing a good job of setting up that for the Norskins, it's these gods aren't these horrible, evil, beyond the veil, nightmarish creatures. They have goods and positives, and there are reasons to follow them besides just, I want to be a demon prince.
Yeah, and it's a part of their society and a part of their culture, and it's really nice to see that being picked up rather than going, the gods are unknown and they inflict mutations and they're all scared and they worship them because if they didn't, it would be terrible and they're all massive marauders wandering around. No, it's a complicated society, and whilst yes, that is a part of it, it's not the whole part of it.
Yeah,
the whole thing. Pardon me.
Yeah, Shornal the Serpent. His page is actually probably the funniest one, because there is nothing redeemable about these guys. They just suck because they're incredibly arrogant, and they are very good at what they do. But they live to see themselves as superior to all of the things, and they pursue excess in all forms. So they're not subtle, and they don't really add much to like peacetime outside of pursuing their own desires. So everyone kind of finds them insufferable, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, hilarious. I wish there'd been a little bit more thought here. The world building here felt weaker.
It does. The Fell Raptor, this one's just kind of, cute Zinchi and stuff. A lot of powerful shamans and soothsayers and such. But one of the things they go with is that the followers of the Fell Raptor value secrecy above almost all other things. So it's very difficult to know who follows the Raptor and who doesn't, because they are a cult that believes that there's really no, like, to them, betrayal and secrecy is part of that game that they're constantly pursuing in the pursuit of the Fell Raptor. And so for them, it is not about being open. Secrecy is like a core tenet of the cult. Which allows them to thrive while being advisors and soothsayers, all this stuff. But it might be a legitimate advisor or soothsayer, or it might be one of these guys. And it's very difficult to tell. And they don't like to share any of the tenets of their faith with anyone that is not a member of them, which gives them kind of a cool... Like, they're not there to be like, oh, we're here to topple Norska, ha ha ha. It's more of that it's a path, it's a path that they walk that encourages them to engage in a certain lifestyle that keeps the Fell Raptor from just being like the dominating, cackling bad guy group that is very... Like, if you play Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning, the way they portray Tzeentch hilariously as the Raven God, which he shouldn't be. But Tzeentch in that game, the way he's portrayed in Norska is as this like overwhelmingly cackling, maniacal, evil, obvious Tzeentchian force. Whereas in this book, he's so much more subtle. His subtlety is the point, which is, it's fun. It's all right.
Yeah, it's fun. I have only 2 comments I'm going to add to this because most of this section is relatively self-explanatory. It's here's the mono-god versions of how the Marauders may present. The 2 things I'm going to mention is first, the Crow and not the Raven is, I think, good. Raptor is a name I genuinely dislike. Not that I don't prefer it to using, say, for example, Raven, a bird that is associated with more. Crow is associated and has long been associated with Nurgles. Perfect. Raptor is obviously giving you the idea of some sort of bird of prey, but if you're doing world building, you want to do... Okay, so a raptor is a if we go back to the root of the word, it comes from Latin and it means basically a plunderer. Okay, a plundering bird of prey, which fits really well, except it's from the north. It's not from frickin' Tilia. They've chosen an exceedingly Latin name for it when they could have gone with a far more Scandinavian-style animal or Scandinavian-style version of how to present it, which they haven't gone with. This is a classic mixture of taking different words in English and going, well, it's an English word. I can use that, right? Yeah, but you're speaking about a northern culture, not a southern one. This is a southern culture name. It's almost the sort of word that, say, Tillians would use to describe these peoples when they see them, rather than what they would self-describe as. It's a bit of a funny one. Yeah, a funny one. Just to bring up this one, shouldn't Nurgle be the fly? No, traditionally it's been the crow for a very long time for Nurgle amongst the Norse peoples. And we're talking like going back a good 30 years worth. The fly as a core piece of imagery has been associated with Nurgle from the very beginning. Since Nurgle was, well, not quite since it was first named, which is all the way back in first edition Warhammer, but pretty much from the Realm of Chaos books onwards, when they imagined all of their Chaos gods and built their first sets. The fly was associated with it there. Then the crow was added later as a primary Norscan one. The Zinch being associated with bird-headed individuals as well was also dropped in at about the same time.
And then the last one, because the majority of this book is actually taken up by like rules for like Pathology systems and magic items and yada yada yada. Which is cool. Which is fine. The last section here basically just follows a Path to Glory example narrative. It doesn't have any effect. It doesn't have any like reflections or ramifications on the wider setting. It literally just follows this group where they start in Norska and then like the actual Norscan peninsula. And then they journey across the Sea of Chaos up into the Chaos Wastes, and then they wander up and they get in a big fight right here on one of the edges of a big thing. And it basically just follows their cute little narrative that they're a group that desires to attract the attention of the Dark Gods, and they kind of get stirred up by what's going on, but it doesn't have any like larger ramifications. It's just like a fun little thing.
To the point that you're just left going, waste of space.
It's literally just a reinforcement for the following pages, which is how do you play a Path to Glory?
How do you play a Path to Glory campaign?
It's basically.
And they could have done that with a beautiful map, which they had already, and like a single box, explaining the great journey of such and such. They could have done that in less space. The amount of overwriting here is almost extraordinary, given how short the Arcane Journal is. They managed to spend pages and pages on something that could have been written in a single column and made more dramatic. I'm not going to dwell too much on the editing, but this is an example for those of you looking for one where they could have pulled 3 extra pages out of this book to present something really cool and exciting about the core setting that they're discussing here and how the Marauders are awesome. But do they do that? They do not. They could have spent a little bit of time discussing some really cool locations inside Norska. Do they do that? They don't. Instead, they focus a lot of their energies discussing a tale which makes no difference at all to the overall old world setting in any depth in the slightest.
Yeah. Now, from here...
It's all right. I mean, I didn't hate it.
Yeah. There is one last little section that I think is worth examining, which is deeper in. There's a section called The Cults of Chaos. This one's pretty fun because it literally opens with a thing that me and Andy have talked a lot about, and I'm glad they're reinforcing for the old world, which is within the Marauder tribes, the ruinous powers are worshipped as a pantheon. Of the many gods of chaos, no one Lord of Ruin is held in higher esteem for the other. And then it goes on to talk about how different versions of the gods have fallen away. There are some people that worship chaos, spelled K-A-O-S, as a singular entity. Some don't. but the big thing is I really like that they go out of the way to say there are many, many, many gods. We're only telling you about 4 of them.
This was one of my favorite parts of the whole book, which in some respects shows you what I thought about the whole book. It's only a single paragraph that's worth calling out, but I'm going to actually quote it directly, not just because it mentioned Char earlier, and I really like the name Char for Tzeentch, but of those cults, those of the Bloodied Hound and the Carrion Crone, the Slithering Serpent, the Fell Raptor are the largest and most widespread. So that's the cults of all the Chaos Gods. So those 4 are the largest and the most widespread, but they are only one part of a far, far bigger whole with lots of different Chaos Gods, as it discusses through the course of that section. And that, for me, is an important part of the background, something that I think that this book does do admirably, and in a way that many previous versions of the old world, Warhammer in particular, with its editions from 3rd all the way through, I'd say more 4th all the way through to 8th, they've forgotten often all the other Chaos Gods. The old world has leaned into the fact that they're still there. There's a lot of them, and the 4 Chaos Gods that we understand as the major powers are exactly that, the major powers. There's also lots of minor powers, and that's nice.
It is. Thorin,
yeah, I really like that one.
We have a 2-part, so that's 6 hours of Quick Headtaker lore on the channel that we did back near the end of the new year, or the end of last year. So go check that out if you'd like. All right, from there, and that's pretty much it. That's the Razing of the Westerland. It's basically a dip. It's a book that focuses mostly on what's going on with those mono god cults. And we'll give you a bit of a Norskin perspective on Friedel's invasion. The end. It's of all of the Arcane Journals, I believe it actually has the least amount of lore writing and the most rules writing. But what's there is nice. What's there is nice.
This is literally fine. If I was to be critical, I would say that space has been wasted and they could have squeezed more in. And it's clear that getting as much out of these books is not their core goal. No. They're not sitting there going, how can we get the most cool, awesome shit into the players' hands that really makes them excited about these particular setups, that provides some really cool characters or discusses some really cool and terrible events. No, they're not interested in that at all. They're just interested in saying, these are a bunch of marauders that you can play. This is where they've raided. And here's an example of what a Path to Glory campaign could look like with an example of someone who's done it. The end. Oh, by the way, here's some extra magic. And yes, they do still refer to most of the northern areas as the Shadowlands. It's
Razing of the Westerland for those.
It's fine. I mean, I sort of liked it. I can't say if I'm rating this out of 5 stars. This is a solid 2-star. 2 beards, if you will. It's not contradicting the previous lore that much. It's using a lot of previous lore in a way that some other books don't. The only place where they really do go to town and messing things up is on the maps. But then we've discussed the old world maps multiple times, and they are universally a bit bad. Because they are constantly drawing upon sources and then not understanding those sources or purposely repitching those sources, depending on how you wish to do it.
Yeah, it's worth noting that, and I'm not saying this to be mean, I'm just stating the case, that especially in the first year where they actually were building the maps of the old world, they were literally using wikis to build their maps. And we know they were because we caught them with Astalia and Talea.
Yeah, and also what they did with Kislev, where it moved from being the 8th edition version of Kislev into the 1st edition version of Kislev through the course of multiple maps that are being presented online. Now, if I'm being honest, it's the 3rd edition if we're talking Warhammer. It's the 1st edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, where they pitched different versions as they moved from type to type, and then ended up with somewhat of an amalgam come the end. So yeah, their mapping has not been great. And this map inside this book is another example of that. But they're well within their rights to just reuse the material in any way they wish, and they have done so here. It's fine. It's a easy 2 beardy book for me. 2 beardies. Yeah. Shall we dive into our super chats before we dive into the joys of Cathay?
Dino Man, on another note, I find myself in a weird spot I think you will relate to. I've seen people making the criticism of the Cathayan dragons making Cathay too much like 40k, where it concentrates too much on the Primarchs and taking attention away from everything else. As someone who thinks that is an issue with 40K, but also someone that likes the dragons, I also can't disagree with that criticism. Yeah,
it's fair. If you are looking for the story of Cathay, you are going to be disappointed. If you're looking for the story of the dragons and how they lead Cathay, you're not going to be disappointed. If you like the story of the Primarchs over in 40K and you think that that is the coolest story ever and that's the one we should be focusing on, then you're going to be equally happy. I think you're correct. It is a criticism that we can definitely lay at the feet of this book. It doesn't make it bad. It just means that its focus may not match your preferences.
Yeah, in some ways, I think there's kind of an irony in that. For those that know, the Stormcast Eternals were very much intended from GW to be like this is Space Marines, or this is 40K for fantasy players, and it didn't work that way. A lot of people didn't. That's not how it ended up working out. In many ways, I think Games Workshop was accidentally much more successful with accidentally making Cathay feel like it is the fantasy 40K faction, because it follows.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's because it follows the actual thing that a lot of people like about 40K, which is that it's a character drama. That's what gets most people into 40K, in my experience. Is it's not the grander setting or the armies, it's the interpersonal drama between the Primarchs.
Everyone's got their own little hook points. I'm just going to say broadly, I agree with you. It's hard to disagree with that criticism.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's observation. It's just an observation.
It's an observation. Yeah, agreed.
Prodaki, we need a Cathay Black Library book. Oh God, I would just like a Black Library book besides the one we got 2 years ago.
Yeah, quite. You would have expected by now for them to be a nice solid set of approximately 12 books.
Yeah. So allow me to
different
pivot.
factions.
Allow me to pivot hard from what I just said of it's not something bad, it's just an observation. Allow me to point out something fucking terrible and rotten, which is that I wanted to scream when I saw Games Workshop put out an article last week about the fucking Scouring Black Library series, where they had the audacity to be like, oh, we're wrapping up the Scouring, which for anyone, or we're doing some Scouring stuff, which for anyone that doesn't know, the Horus Heresy ended. It's over. They finished it. And then they went, oh, but we're going to talk about what happens afterwards, which is the Scouring. But in that article, they have the fucking balls to say, but don't worry, after the Scouring, we're going to do more Horus Heresy era books. And it's like, fuck you! You finished it! Write about anything else! Anything else! We have one book!
They don't want to lose their cash cow. I understand that.
I hate the Horus Heresy stuff. You finished it. Move on.
No, I understand.
Anything else? Give me a fucking fantasy book. Oh.
It does suggest, though, that the Bretonian book either didn't sell as much as they wanted or something else. I don't know. Who can say? I can say for certain, though, that I really wish there was more.
Yeah.
Just wish there was more.
Nagwal. I like to imagine that the lost female dragon of all the winds to have fallen into Dar, use, and made the Blood Naga. Also thinking about Warhammer Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism. So there is a lot of curiosity about the ninth child, because we have a pretty good idea of the other 8. The only other one that we know nothing about is the Shadow Dragon, which is very appropriate. But the ninth child, who would not be associated with any one particular wind, is a big old mystery. And there's a lot of very fun fan theories, most of which revolve around it falling to chaos. We don't know if it would be a boy or a girl. And
possibly being the dragon that was killed by Archeon.
Yeah, that's the personal version that I like to subscribe to. I like the idea that Flamefang, which is the Western name of the dragon that Archeon fought, was the ninth dragon child, because I think that tying that into the Ever Chosen saga would be flawless. But
it would be good.
Also to a potential route. Like it could be any number of things. It's literally just like fan fiction at this point.
It is purely fan fiction. You could as easily drop that particular dragon over in Nippon if you wish to do so, particularly given the close connections between China and Japan. And yes, I'm aware of not just the connections, all the issues, but broadly speaking, there's an awful lot of cross-cultural imports of ideas there. And I think it would be not inappropriate to have that be a thing as well. Again, I think I would probably tell a different story for Nippon, but you could also do that.
Zero Daimu. Based on what we know now, is the average Cathayan, Bretonnian, Chilean, Imperial, or Estalian peasant most free? Or the human nations
free? Free is an interesting word. Because the Cathayans are not free.
No.
At all. Bretonnians are in a worse place. They're not free and they're badly tended. The Tilians, they're sort of free. Empire, no, they're worse. Estalian kingdoms, not free. So of those, probably the Tilians, but all it will take is a single book to come out and contradict that, and it will be then a different story. You've got to remember that most of these locations, except for possibly Cathay, because they have blanket written that with a broad paintbrush, are collections of kingdoms and smaller states, all of which have got their own laws, which are often enforced by their own local nobility, meaning that trying to talk about the empire is almost a waste of time because each part of the empire handles it differently. So one part of the empire might be surprisingly free. And then you go to another and they're treated worse than slaves. They're peasants, that is. And that is the case for pretty much all of these. If we're talking in general terms, though, probably Tilia, but that's a really uncertain thing to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to, what he said. Gnostic Loam trivia. In the book of Exodus, the Hebrew translates not as plague of frogs, but the singular plague of frog. Kremlo episode when?
I'm not. I did not know that one. That it was not pluralized. So assuming that's true, I sort of love it, and it makes me want to imagine what the plague of frog is. Oh, it's beautiful.
A singular, awful, annoying fucking frog, and his name was
the plague of Kremlo. That's great. Thanks for that one.
That's going to be my epitaph when I die. It's just going to be right on there. Chris, Orientalism is right. Cathay feels alien, similar to how Chinese people are often portrayed in media as a hive mind. The writing doesn't seem important during production, like it's on a tiny budget. It is, I think. I think it's on a very tiny budget.
I want deeply to disagree with this, Crisps. I want to, but I don't think I can. I'm not entirely convinced that they have a strong writing staff working on the old world. So somebody with a strong voice and idea for what the campaign should be, an editor who will challenge them about every single choice that they've made, and then a developer sitting over the top of them all saying what every book has to do for the line as a whole. It doesn't appear that they have a strong writing team in place, and instead each book sort of happens and is written not that well.
Yeah, just a reminder, Games Workshop, if you ever want to hire the Lorebeards to come like lore-proof all your stuff for relatively cheap, we'll do it. But anyway, so
We're such an easy lay.
We are. I want to pull back the curtain a little bit because this is something I was thinking about, and it reminds me of a discussion that I had with Andy Hall back on the earlier versions of Lorebeards. And what it boils down to is this: one of the things that someone asked me about that I think is worth pointing out is the conversation of why is Total War Warhammer Cathay so different than Old World Cathay, even though they should be the exact same thing. They should be. But Total War Cathay is like fascinatingly like deep and like has a lot of
layered.
The video game should not be more layered than the core source material. And the answer is actually really easy if you remember me discussing with Andy Hall, but it's also kind of alarming at the same time, which is that to make Total War Grand Cathay, they were not given this. Games Workshop got together with a lot of their biggest writers when they were excited for the Cathay project And they had a big group of writers that worked together to make Creative Assembly a 6th edition, 7th edition, and 8th edition Grand Cathay books. And they gave them these unreleased, essentially, army books and said, here you go. Here's your lore, here's your characters and stuff. And that's what Total War Warhammer 3 Cathay lore is based on. And then the Old World happened. And when we finally got around to the Cathay being released, we've been getting these itty-bitty little books that if you probably combined all 3 of these books together, which these are the 3 Cathay books, they might roughly get close, but actually probably not super close to the amount of lore you would have gotten in one of those army books.
It wouldn't even match one of them, I think.
Yeah, and those army books were made by genuinely a super team of passionate folks that were probably allowed to go a lot more wild and write something that they felt would fit Warhammer, whereas these books feel like that's not necessarily the case, which is disappointing and weird.
It's hard to disagree with that. So to go through all of your point, Chris, and again, thank you very much for the super chat. Orientalism is right. I kind of agree. Cathay feels alien. I do agree. Similar to how Chinese people are often portrayed in media as a hive mind. Oh boy, do I agree. The writing doesn't seem important during production, like it's on a tiny budget. And again, I agree, largely because the word seem is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because it does seem like this. And it might be wrong. I mean, there might be something going on behind the scenes that we don't know, because none of us are behind the scenes of this particular team and what they're creating. All we have is the evidence that's placed before us, and it's hard to disagree with your assessment, Chris.
Yep. GW, another map to piss off Andy.
You are not wrong. Maps are... I'm just not even going to start on it. But loosely speaking, yeah. They're at their strongest when they're mapping areas for the first time. They're at their weakest when they're mapping areas that have been mapped by multiple cartographers in the past. And those cartographers were basing their maps off established historical examples of what all the different towns and villages were. And they basically just come in and gone, bulldoze! And that always leaves those who are fans of the older setting going, why did you bulldoze? Why didn't you just create something that matches the stuff that came before? It's not hard. There's only a single source to read here. Just one. And you could easily have just ported over all the important bits from that and created all the new bits around it. It just looks like there's people who are creating this material who don't actually know the deeper Warhammer lore that exists already, nor do they particularly care. And that's okay, because they can do whatever they want with their setting. But for those of us who have pored over all the little lore snippets, you can't help but go, look, that town you've marked, you do know it was founded in 2450. And this map is 150 years before that. What the heck? That makes no sense at all. How's that town there? And then for those of us who like to try and justify the lore, you're then going, well, maybe the second one's a refounding of the old town that was there before. Oh no!
Arnal 2 or new Arnal. Down man. Maybe I have to read on the page, but to me it sounds like Celeste one lacks a bit of depth. I think they'd rather. Yeah, they did. And the funny thing is, when I misread it the first time, I thought they did have a cool thing where it notes that the weapon masters of Shornal are begrudgingly deeply respected by members outside the cult. And when I read that the first time, I was like, oh, they mean like craftsmen, like the guys making weapons. The artificers of Shornal are like deeply valued and appreciated. But then when I looked at it the second time, I went, oh no, they mean weapon masters and someone that wields it and like dances and fights. And I felt like that was an oopsie that I wish was actually the case. I feel like having like the actual weapon crafters, the people that are creating like all the magic items and the armor and like legendary blades being the perfectionists of Slaanesh would have been perfect. And that would have been super cool. They didn't do that, but they did.
I have one comment, and last one. I think that the eagle is less appropriate than the owl. I disagree with this one, largely because take a look at all the greater demons of Tzeentch and their big, long, beaky faces. Owls tend to have small beaks. Plus, we do not want to be cross-associating chaos gods with other gods and their symbols. Verena uses the symbology of the owl, and we don't want Verena and Zinch to be conflated, because inevitably fans will come along and say, does that just mean that Verena is Zinch? Oh, no. So the eagle, or a big long beaked creature of some sort, does make more sense. So raptor as a style makes sense, if I still don't think it was the correct choice of wording.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they pivoted from eagle to raptor. But
they did.
Skylar Martin, I want old world TTRPG to be set in Cathay. Yeah, there have been rumors bubbling around that we're getting a Cubicle 7 Cathay thing. I don't know when, but there's been...
I hope it's true, and I also hope that they're willing to dive into the complexity of it all.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're all caught up, so it's time for the fun book.
Finally. Okay, right. Do I get to do my complaint about the very first part?
Yeah, get it out of the way.
Okay, I'm going to get out of the way now. Take this as a single example of what I mean by editing needing to be properly examined by these books. So at the beginning of the book, there's a section called The Empire of Grand Cathay. And they quickly break down just how awesome Cathay is, because as we all know, Cathay is
I honestly
perfect.
Hate Prosperity and Unity.
Okay, so let's bring up Prosperity and Unity, and I'm going to read you out one part, which I think is important that we just very quickly discuss. Now, I'm only highlighting one because I don't want this stream to be me picking apart every word choice that they make in two books, because if I did that, you'd all get bored. I'd enjoy it. I'd enjoy it immensely.
While you would not. We'll say that art sure is fucking gorgeous, though. The art's amazing.
So much ass. But as we go over here, the first sentence, the Empire of Grand Cathay has stood the test of time, having existed for many centuries and only grown in strength as the ages have passed, because obviously Cathay is awesome. Its major cities, here we go, have grown to become vast, sprawling metropoles with bustling markets and free-flowing trade, and its vast tracts of rich farmland boast bountiful harvests and an ever-increasing herds of healthy stock. Now, beyond the fact that it's basically saying Cathay is great, which slightly bugs me, it's the word metropoles. Now, you might not know what the word metropole means, so let's have a quick discussion, because it doesn't mean city. At all. A metropole is the parent state of a colony. So, for example, the Roman Empire, its metropole is Italy. That's what a metropole is. Clearly, metropolis is the sort of word they're going for, a Greek idea of a city. Okay, they're become vast, sprawling metropolises, or metropoli if you prefer, with bustling markets. That's what they're going for. But no, they've used the wrong word. They've used a word that they thought sounded cool. This is a bad piece of editing. Now, the writer should, of course, be blamed for using the wrong word, because, hey, the writer did it. But the editor is the one who's at fault here, because the editor should come in afterwards and say, I don't think this word means what you think it means. Writers get things wrong all the time. It's just how it works. The editor's job is to come in and fix this stuff. This hasn't been fixed. This is just wrong. A city is never really a metropole. A city-state, perhaps, for a vast empire that comes out of it, perhaps, but not multiple cities. It makes no sense. It is the wrong use of the word. Now, I'm highlighting just this one in the first paragraph of the book, because this happens in multiple places throughout this book. It happens in multiple places throughout both of these books, where they use a word just a bit wrong, where they don't quite understand how words should be used or how paragraphs should be formed.
How dare they write like I talk? How dare they?
Yeah, quite. So ultimately, I found this annoying. So I'm only doing this one. I'm not doing any more. But just say that if you see me cringe as we're going through the various sections here, it's because there's something in that section that made me go, oh gosh, darn it, they should have just got a good editor. So long story short, this book needs an editor. Not just it could have used one, or it would have made it a bit better. It would have made it much better, because the use of language is often poor.
Can that be your new catchphrase?
Paragraphs, motherfucker.
Do you write them?
If I was to lay one major issue, is that they will often use 40 words to say something that 10 could. and 10 could say more dramatically. And there is no more guilty a place of this than the timeline, where you've got a relatively short amount of space. Really, they could have said as much as they said in just 2 pages, and they did it in 4. And they could have turned those 4 pages into such an in-depth piece of awesome examination into everything that's ever happened to Cathay. But instead, we get 4 pages of very drawn-out information. Having said that, though, when we get to the timeline, there's some cool shit in there.
Yeah. So, Empire Grand Cathay, this part, basically, prosperity and unity. I'm going to say it. It sucks.
It sucks.
It feels like it's obviously lying. Because it's basically saying that Grand Cathay is perfect and they have no problems whatsoever. And then you get several pages later and they go, just kidding, we have problems.
Yeah, as well as caring for their fellow countrymen, the people of Grand Cathay work tirelessly when tending to the needs of the land itself. Crops are carefully rotated and managed to ensure that none of the fields are over-farmed, a practice which allows the soil to recover between harvests and careful management. Who fucking cares? Just the way it's written is massively overwritten, and it's also massively... Cathay is awesome! That just leaves you going...
The first part makes me feel like the Cathayan people are more like automatons than the lizardmen are.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is not a compliment, to be clear.
Right. It's just this whole section slightly bugged me because it was not well written, it was overwritten, and it is so broad paintbrush that it's almost pointless. Yeah.
I bet y'all thought we were just going to be gushing over this book the whole time.
Nope.
Weren't you in for a shot?
We're going to gush, but not this bit.
So, by land and sea, it's fine. Basically just talks about how Cathay trades with different parts of the world. The one thing in there I do like is they do talk about paying ties to the ogres and the ogre kingdoms, which is nice. That's actually, this may sound crazy, that's the first explicit mention we've had of the ogre kingdom ogres in the old world. They have not been mentioned until this page because they're not a playable faction right now. So
I want to bring this up because I'm scared it might be true, but I do think it's worth saying.
I was going to say that when we were talking about the editing part, that it feels kind of AI-y. I don't want to accuse them of that.
No, neither do I, but I do think it's worth saying. Because it falls into some of the traps that AI do, where the sentence structures follow it. Now, if you watch my Inside the Rookery last Saturday over on Rookery Publications site, you'll notice that one of the things I said during that stream was, one thing that I hate about AI and its rise is that the way I write, which is relatively frequent use of M dashes, which is short sentence, longer impactful sentence, which is the use of adverbs to quietly suggest that something is about to occur, is all stuff that AI does. And I hate it because it means that as I do my editing on my own writing, I'm left going, do I want to change this so it sounds less AI-like? How have I reached this point? Yuck! But some of this does feel like that, although I will say there's no point when I read through this that I went, this is clearly an AI section. So for all, I do think it is worth bringing up, Dylan. Assuming that I got it. Dylan Schroeder? Yeah, Dylan Schroeder. Yeah. I'm not certain it's the case, and I wouldn't like to besmirch somebody's good name by saying that, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen, or at least there might have been a pass with an AI editor.
What we can say is that we know they can do better, and we would ask that they do better.
Agreed. That I will not withdraw from.
Yeah. From there, disharmony in the realm. This part basically just focuses on what are the outside threats to Cathay, and it goes over who's coming at them from east, north, south, and west, and it gives a little tidbit on each of the dragons. I do like. I'm going to say it. We need an alarm for this. I don't have an alarm for this, but we need an alarm for it. Lorebeards was right. Yin Yin is explicitly noted as focusing upon exploration in foreign affairs. She's focusing on her boyfriend. She's not staying at home. We called it. We called it.
Yeah, so I was really hopeful when I read the title for this because I thought, here we go. And instead, what disharmony inside the realm means is after the dragons bicker sometimes, and because of that, because they bicker, they become susceptible to attacks from the outside. So Cathay is still perfect. It's just because they're all doing their own thing. Sometimes they get attacked from the outside, and I really groaned when I read this. I also want to bring up one comment here that I think is worth mentioning, Saurus Blood. Coming out as anti-AI because you can't copyright it is broadly speaking correct. But AI does a lot more than just simply generate text. It can also edit text. It's basically, here's a thing I've written. Can you tell me what I've done wrong? And if you don't know English all that well, you might find yourself doing things wrong in turn afterwards. AI doesn't just need to generate text. AI can do a lot more than that. Large language models, because I don't think AI is really appropriate for much of what large language models do, are far broader in application than simply generating text.
Yeah. But I mean, there is some cute stuff in here. We do get some nice little notes about some of the dragons and their personal issues. That Li Dao is a pissy guy who's got a lot of his anger focused on the Monkey King, which we'll learn some really cool shit about the Monkey King later, and Li Dao and their relationship. And we've got some about Yin Yin is too busy macking on her boyfriend, totally not Sea Lord Island or Ashland.
You really love that idea, don't you?
Listen. If that ever was even like, this is flying so close to the sun on that, it just kills me every time. Zhao Ming, I am pleased to see they're really leaning into the obsessive alchemist angle, which I think does really well for him. And this is leading to larger incursions of greenskins and ogres and stuff. Cool. And then Yin Yin's got Corsair problems, which is their way of saying dark elves without using the word dark elves. And then we've got Miao Ying dealing with chaos in the north. Cool, great, awesome, whatever.
Yeah, I really wish they'd, because they were quite happy undermining some of the other dragons they mentioned. I really wish that they'd just given Miao Ying just a little bit less of the perfect outlook and just done a little bit,
I think this book does a great job of damning her without meaning to, which is, I like, but it's not the intent.
It's not the intent. And I really wished it had been just a touch more carefully written, so that it actually become an intent.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Yeah, totally. So let's wait till we get there.
Okay, Threat of Chaos. This one, it's fine. Basically, just talks about that Great Bastion's been breached a couple times. It talks about some scenarios where people have gotten over it. Whoop-de-doo.
This one here felt like they managed to spend an entire 3 paragraphs saying something one paragraph could say, giving them another 2 paragraph for cool, awesome extra details. That felt like a waste of space to me.
Yep. Strategy and reinforcement basically says almost the exact same thing the last one did.
Yep, it's really annoying.
The only notable thing it adds, which later in the book does a better job of exploring, is that sometimes they open the gates on purpose to allow the forces of chaos in so that they kind of funnel them, which the book later examines in a much better way.
Yeah, and as a strategy is one of the most ridiculously stupid strategies you can ever imagine. The whole setup, you just look at it and go, wait a minute, has anyone actually thought about what this means? Because I'm not convinced that this is a good idea, but nevertheless, it's a good idea, man.
Yeah, the later book, it's one of those things that I actually like it's objectively why would you build a wall just to open a part of the wall?
A big magic wall big magic wall awesome to hold back chaos.
I think there is a way to interpret it that's actually genius, but it's not what they wrote, but it's how I interpret it, but we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
And then Armed and Ready, which basically just says that regular Cathayans will fight. What do you do? Yeah,
this section is almost the sections that I was hoping the last 3 sections would be. And that is loosely, how do the Cathayans mobilize? What is happening? And it gives you a bit of an idea when they're saying the magistrate might gallop out on horse or coming in Sky Lantern or whatever else it might be as they start speaking to local nobles. But it's so blandly written and so without character that you're left not really understanding anything other than the most broad, again, brushstrokes of how it might occur. This is the section where they could have easily dived into a little bit of structure about how Cathayan armies work, or a little bit of detail about one individual or another individual, perhaps dial in to provide a little bit of actual understanding for how Cathayans work by using a single example of that individual and then pulling back out again to talk about the generalization of how their armies work. It is so bland that I was at this point beginning to get really worried on my read through, because the material up to this point was very overwritten, very bland, lacking in detail. But fortunately, we're about to go in a different direction.
Yeah, because Armed and Ready is the best section of these four, because it actually talks about like what do the regular people do when word arrives that the part of the Bastion has fallen, and the answer is they kind of start doing some really interesting stuff, like people pivot into wartime mode, and it's cool. But we only get one paragraph of that.
Yeah,
I would have liked more.
It's just not frightfully well constructed, and is sort of bland. Again, it feels like if an editor had come in and said, explain this, provide detail, make this punchier. One thing that this text isn't is punchy. This is not tight, concise, exciting prose. This is long sentences, often poorly put together, which is one of the reasons why I don't think that AI is perhaps the wisest place to fall back on, because AI would have done some of these, the large language models would have built some of these paragraphs just better.
Yep. All right. So timeline time. Woohoo!
Hey! Get to the good bit.
Yeah, we're gonna move through this pretty snappy until we like hit parts that are fun. So minus 15,000. Cool to see that we're reinforcing.
Martin date. That was a date that we don't see very often. So really nice to see it.
Yeah, rare they go that far back. So this is the old ones show up, and we get explicit mention that many of the ancient dragons are killed by the old ones or their great Saurian legions, which is awesome. And the Celestial Dragon Emperor goes, I shall not die against the giant god beings and their infinite armies of lizards. I will watch from a distance and be stealthy. And so because of that, he survives. One
other very important point here, though. But first, it's the Celestial Dragon, which is worth mentioning directly. This is the Azir Dragon. It's very clear as we then move on to learns to draw from the winds of magic. Yeah, and I bring this one up because it's super important. As we discussed when we were going through the new lore that was presented by the Old World Rulebook, they basically said the winds of magic were formed after the Cataclysm. And here we have, in minus 15,000, the opposite situation.
So this book introduces a very interesting retcon, which Andy just said, that gets a little further expanded on,
it does.
Which boils down to the winds of magic were already there, which makes sense, but the winds of magic will change later, but everything that comprises the winds of magic already existed, which is a significant retcon from the core rulebook.
And is clearly a retcon as well, because they've looked at it and gone, shit, we've said this. How can we say...
Which me and Andy called that when we read that book and went, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that makes no sense at all. They're going to retcon this. This book retcons it hard. And exactly the way we said. And it appears that whoever did the retconning thought about it a bit and added enough fudge to say, you know what, the winds of magic didn't really exist before, at least not in the way we understand them now. They were just slightly different, but they were still the winds of magic because, you know, Azir and the Celestial Dragon. I mean, they have to be the same, don't they? So, yeah, it's really nice to see that land and then to retcon it in a way that makes sense.
Next, we have one of the biggest lore drops I have seen in a long time. Minus 5,800. Great tribes of humans, the youngest of the races created by the old ones, which this actually vaguely implies ogres and halflings don't exist yet. Migrate across the world and begin to settle in the lands to the east. So this means Cathay humans, because we've talked about this of where humans just created multiple places. This explicitly states humanity comes from a single originator out in the west, likely around Nehekara.
Well, if we go with the old stories, it's Albion where they come from. And they spread out from Albion and go down to all the other places. And we have a second potential origin point of the Southlands. We only have that as potential because it's not actually confirmed. Nehekara would make sense of that because a lot of the Nehekaran legends are about moving up from the south and taking their gods with them. But Albion is confirmed in multiple sources as being a source of humanity. And this is genuinely huge in terms of what they're doing. They are confirming that humanity has been there since the beginning. They are confirming that humanity were a sentient spreading species. They are going against many of the earlier versions of Warhammer. If we go to Warhammer 6th edition, they erased all references to humanity in the Hordes of Chaos that arrived during the Cataclysm. Why? Because there was no humans as we understand them in the world. And they said, it's all demons. It's just all demons. We remove all humans. We can't have Morcar, the first ever chosen, anymore because there's no humans back then. We have to basically retcon Morcar and get rid of him. So they did. They got rid of Morcar. They got rid of all the humans that were involved with the first Chaos Hordes. They got rid of all of it. And they added in the idea that humanity came post the Cataclysm in its current formation. This ditches about 5 editions worth of Warhammer lore. In fact, you could argue it ditches almost 7 to 8 editions of Warhammer lore and says everything written about Warhammer humans is now history. Now that humanity as we know it and understand it are pre-cataclysm, forming empires, doing their thing, spreading across the world, and the definite case that the elves and the dwarves are the elder species is eradicated. They no longer are.
Yeah, and this also means that humanity is a good bit older than a lot of, even if you were like, oh, I believe humanities were pre-cataclysm, a lot of us would have assumed that they were like right before. This has them like large tribes, huge tribes of people with cultures and identities are migrating all the way to Grand Cathay from somewhere 200 years before the cataclysm even hits. So humanity has been around for a hot minute.
I'm just going to bring this one up so we get it. Now, Albion, how I dislike that. The reason for that is because Nottingham. It's where all humans came from in the Warhammer world.
It's a GW reference.
It's a GW reference because they created everything Warhammer, so everything spans from Albion. And that's popped up in multiple editions that the ancient humans came from that area.
Yeah, so from here, we get that the Celestial Dragon Emperor basically pulls the Santa Claus and is a little bit of a creeper and just watches humanity from the shadows. And then 100 years later, his wife shows up. So we have the full-on date for when the sorry, this is when they take as a mate. So she shows up somewhere between these times.
Yeah.
So within 100 years, the Moon Empress comes down, and her and the Celestial Dragon Emperor get together, and she teaches him how to take on human form. And a huge lore drop is that the first of their 9 children is born in 5700, which is Shiama. So Shiama is definitely the firstborn. Yep. And the dragon kids are actually significantly younger than I thought they were.
Yeah, way younger. They've dated them far closer to the cataclysm than many expected. Many expect them to be as much as maybe an extra 2,500 years older than they currently are. This is putting them really quite close to the cataclysm and everything that happens because they're born just before. And I mean just before. You can't get any closer to the cataclysm than this.
Yeah, it's just a century before the cataclysm hits. And this leads to, and this also seems to very much imply, because we know of the role that many of them play, that several of the children may have likely been born post-cataclysm.
There's definitely a hint of that.
Yeah, like we know based on...
But there's probably not if we go back to the earlier sources where they say they were all born beforehand.
Yeah, so in that case, they're all born within 100 years.
Yeah, they're all born in the same 100-year space. And then they decide after that to stop having kids.
Yeah, which...
they're done.
Yeah, there's a part of me, based on all the stuff we know about Shenyang and Kuei Yin, it really feels like they were not having children because, oh, we love each other and we'll just have children naturally as it comes. It almost feels ritualistic.
I don't know. I don't know. The reason I say I don't know is because Games Workshop often likes to humanize all their tales, and to have to remove that aspect of it feels something like they probably wouldn't do when they dive into it.
Yeah, I would love to know more. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, hard. But we do have 100 years worth of multiple dragons being born, and then boom goes the world.
Yeah, so 5600, classic date. The old ones vanish. Demons go across the world. I do like that the Slann and the elves get a little bit of a thumbs up. Always nice to see them. Cool. Moving on.
And it's also worth noting that the 6th edition onwards version of the tale, which is its demonic forces that are largely the forces of chaos, is reinforced here. That it's demonic forces that the celestial dragon is having to deal with. We're not dealing with the older version of Warhammer, which was basically when the chaos came, most of the world fell. and humans fell, and beastmen were created, and all sorts of stuff. They're, again, focusing here primarily upon demonic forces. So it's mostly the 6th edition to 8th edition version that we're getting reiterated here.
Yep. From there, we get to 5,000. So 600 years later, which talks about that. Interestingly, it takes 600 years for the dragons to start actually teaching humanity anything. So the dragons kind of are just doing their own thing and seemingly ignoring humanity. But after 600 years of fighting, and likely the fighting getting worse and worse and worse and worse, the dragons seem to look at humanity and go, we could use these guys as tools.
Yeah, basically, it takes them 600 years to come to the same conclusion that Teclis arrives at, which is we need to teach the humans how to do magic. Because they're really magically capable. It's one of the things that humans, as we've discussed in previous streams, are very capable of doing.
Interestingly, it does note that they do this in the hopes that it will protect them from the corrupting influence of chaos, which seems to imply that they were having problems with large amounts of humans being corrupted by chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. And they teach them how to use the winds of magic in a fashion that stops them from corrupting. So basically, they teach them how to hopefully not create Dar, not fall to chaos, all that sort of nonsense. It's the purifying aspect of the dragons, which is frequently referenced through the various iterations. Yep. And this is our first example of the dragons teaching humanity magic over in the East, and it's during the Cataclysm.
500 years later, we get Shyama's invasion. Go watch our stream about the very first Cathay book, where we delve hard into Shyama's story.
Yeah, it's a good story.
It's a great story.
Yeah, like that one.
We're gonna kind of just skip over this, but we do get some hard dates about when it happens, which is fun.
It is good.
Which also, Shyama's invasion of the realm of chaos and her coming back takes 2 years. That's a long time. That's a really fucking long time for an invasion. Then 4420, which for those that know your Warhammer Fantasy calendar, this is when the Great Vortex happens. Games Workshop has obviously in the old world very much designed the narrative where there's a great kind of confluence of events where every order faction basically does something to punch chaos in the nuts. In 4420, like you have like the Lord Croak saves Itza and dies. You have the Celestial Dragon Emperor goes up north and kicks the shit out of a bunch of demons. Grimnir is fighting his way to seal the gate, and the elves do the Great Vortex. So there's like a great number of things that happen all at once, and it results in chaos being at least temporarily defeated.
Yeah, I find it interesting that this entire section doesn't talk about Grand Cathay doing it. It talks about the dragons doing it. And in some respects, it's one of the issues with the book, in that Grand Cathay is nothing more than an extension of a few dragons.
Well, it does say at the head of a massive army of Cathayans.
Well, yeah, but it's still an extension of them. There's no important character. There's no equivalent of an Aryan. There's no Cathayans at all.
I would love to know what humanity was doing. Because that's from when they started teaching the humans magic. So they're like heavily involved with them. Assuming, like, which I think it'd actually be safe to say they were involved with them before that, because it notes that him and his wife were like watching over and living amongst the humans. So, like, humanity has been hanging out with Shen Yang by this point for 1,200 years.
Indeed. And if we're looking for trying to date Cathay, if not Grand Cathay, it's around this era that we're talking about, and the foundation of Grand Cathay comes later. It's also worth noting, I mean, is it? It is. It's worth noting that, again, the forces of demons that are discussed that they're facing are demonic. They're not facing off against beastmen, although they probably should be. It's not discussing them facing off against corrupted humans, which, again, they probably should be, because humanity has spread across the world and we're in a storm of chaos. There's mutants everywhere now, but they have completely missed that particular aspect. They've fallen very much into the 6th edition version of Warhammer and showing that it's demons. And it does make sense, because Be'lakor at this moment is sitting at the top of the world and almost certainly being the general that they're facing off against multiple times over the course of these centuries.
Yeah, I don't know if this will ever happen, but I do desperately hope we eventually get a story of what was going on explicitly within the old world during this time when Be'lakor is the big bad. And I hope there is a first ever chosen somewhere doing something.
It makes sense. I mean, in the very oldest tales from 4th edition, Morcar was the ever-chosen during this era. That would be completely changed where Morcar becomes the first ever chosen during Sigmar's era with later rewritings. But we do have almost certainly humanity all over the place falling, and Be'lakor is almost the 5th chaos power sitting in the north of the world. And he is the one that most of them are facing off against up there. And he eventually will have most of his powers pulled out from underneath him by good old Tzeentch.
Yeah. From there, we go to 4419, where chaos is gone for now. And the Celestial Dragon Emperor begins battling the corruption of Cathay itself with the help of his children. This is fun. This ties into something me and Andy have discussed a lot when the oh god, I can't remember the name of the DLC. The one with the Changeling and Yuan Bo came out, where they introduced the Celestial Lion, which is a purified creature, and we were like, oh, that's really cool, and this just reinforces that.
It does. It's a nice reinforcement of the previously written lore, so it's a nice detail. Not much else to say there.
Yep. Minus 3,000. The Celestial Dragon Emperor officially becomes the Emperor of the East and formally names the lands he controls Grand Cathay, and he founds. Well, actually, he's not founded it, but he seats his seat of power in the city that is already around at this point.
Yes, it's already around. Yeah, so what we get here is that there are lots and lots of human cities at this point. And probably Cathay exists already, possibly around Wage Inn. And Grand Cathay is then founded from this and all of the other city-states. I wasn't entirely happy with the Emperor of the East title because that suggests that they pose themselves as Eastern and not, say, Western. Why wouldn't they see themselves as the West? There's lands to both West and East of where they are. This Emperor of the East is an odd title and one that is very, very, very Europe-coded.
Yeah, I know. The funny thing is, it's like the Celestial Dragon calls himself that, and I feel like that is not what he would call. Like, I could maybe see the humans being like, well, ancestrally, we came from the West ages ago. But like for the dragon, like he lives here. He's always lived here. This isn't East to him. He's just here. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an odd one. But beyond that, yeah, sure. Minus 3,000. We've got our founding of Grand Cathay according to this version.
Yeah. From there. Minus 2,800.
It's also worth noting he is not the emperor of everything that's in that area in the east because we have loads of other cultures. It's just a weird title. I think calling that out again is worth noting.
The only thing I can legitimately think, because they never use this term ever again, and it's never been used prior to this moment with Shen Yang, is the author of this book was like, oh, if I just say emperor, they might think I'm talking about the empire. So let me specify it's Emperor of the East. Which, like,
Emperor of Grand, I mean, just with rewording the Emperor of Grand Cathay. That would have done.
That's all he had to say. I don't know why.
It's a weird one.
Yeah. All right. From there, we go to minus 2,800. So keep in mind, this is about 1,600 years after Chaos has been defeated. This is actually a very tragic paragraph, which I like. Which is that in an effort to safeguard the last remnants of the world he once knew, the Celestial Dragon seeks out the Sky Titans. Though the two had battled before the arrival of the Old Ones, both the Celestial Dragon and the Lords of the Sky Titans agree that only together can they hope to preserve something of the ancient world. He gives them the secrets of black powder to help with their ogre war, and it's not said what he receives in return.
Yep. I found this to be a little bit empty, but fine. There's a nice little detail about the Sky Titans and him. I'm still not entirely sure if I like the idea of the black powder coming from here. It undermines one of the core concepts of the dwarfs. But equally, the dwarfs have been written that way more than once, so I'm not too bothered by it.
From there, we get to see that this fails spectacularly because only 50 years later, which is a eye blink, the hordes of the ogres basically wipe out the Sky Titans. Or at least are becoming enough of a problem that this leads to, we still don't know exactly why he went to such an extreme. This still feels like there's an untold story. But the Celestial Dragon Emperor, we get the confirmation that him and the Court Astromancers drop a pure Warpstone meteorite on the Ogre Kingdoms, which causes a nightmarish thing. And okay, so there's a cool bit about this later that I'm gonna briefly mention now, but we'll talk more about it later, which is when we get into the Western Cathay section, where we find out that the Celestial Dragon Emperor either A, goofed and they did not know what they were he fucked up is like the period. One of the things that the book really doesn't lean into that I'm so sad they didn't is we find out, which this is a genuine shock to me, that there was a large amount of Cathayan citizens and cities and that he drops the comment on.
Yeah.
Didn't warn them, didn't evacuate. He murders tens of thousands of his own people that he didn't have to.
Yeah, there's a story here, as I've probably said in multiple threads in the past. There's a story here, and it hasn't been written. The thing that disappointed me most about this entry wasn't that it just rewrote the same old story, down comes the comet, is that it gave literally no justification or real examination of proper consequences. Because if you murder loads of people, people get upset. Yeah, no, let's just say it happened. It's a perfect society. No one cares. Let's move on to the next stage.
This should have caused a civil war.
This is such an event. It's massive. And the fuck up is of an almost extraordinary level because of what happens to the ogres, to the amount of danger that it causes, and to how much it ruins this part of Cathay. Yeah.
So we'll get into that more when we get to Western Cathay, which section's a little later. Minus 2350. We get when ocean trade. I do like that they specify ocean trade. Really kicks up between Nehekara and Grand Cathay. Cool. They exchange tech. Cool.
What I particularly disliked about this was the complete lack of inclusion of elves.
Yeah, they don't talk about elven trade. Like
they just don't talk. It's like they forgot that the elves exist.
They did because there's a whole thing in the earlier books. Yeah, the earlier Cathay books talk actually a significant amount of the relationship between the elves and Great Cathay. It's talked a lot about in the High Elf book, and this book they just kind of forgot about it.
They completely forgot. Whoever wrote this book clearly either didn't like elves or just forgot they existed.
150 years later, we get that Nehekara has expanded all the way to the River Ruin, which once again makes Nehekara just huge. Nehekara is so big in this era of the world, which is cool. I love that. I love that Nehekara gets absolutely titanic in size.
River Ruin, should it be called that at this era?
I don't remember where the Chaos Dwarfs are at this point.
Yeah. No, the answer is no, it should not be called the River Ruin at this point.
Yeah, because they haven't polluted it yet.
The small details like this that bug me, where you can very quickly cover that up with what would later be called the River Ruin. And given how much they overwrite other areas, overwriting this small piece here, I think, would have been a worthwhile addition. It makes it feel like that the setting adapts and changes over time according to events, rather than this thing is named this and always has been for 10,000 years.
Yeah, the map says it's named that, therefore the old ones named it that, and it never changed.
Yep, that's it. You figured it
out. Okay, so this is a huge story beat. Minus 2,000. The Monkey King, who we've been dying to know more about, Monarch of the Heavenly Mountains, also known as the Mountains of Heaven, which apparently could be called either, descends from his realm to wreak havoc upon Li Dao, and the Fire Dragon goes to meet him, but his father intercedes. And the Celestial Dragon Emperor instead meets with the Monkey King and gifts him with a crown of unmatched beauty, acknowledging him as the king of the Mountains of Heaven. The Monkey King goes, what a kingly gift. I will take this and I shall leave. And but it notes that blissfully unaware that the Emperor's gift was no mere trinket. And this is a very obvious homage to the Journey to the West.
I'm sure it is.
If you know the original story, Sun Wukong has to put a crown on as part of his being released to help with the Journey to the West, where the monk Tripitaka can literally chant a phrase, and when he chants it, it makes the crown cause horrific pain to Sun Wukong. So this is basically our confirmation of the Monkey King's relationship with Grand Cathay, which is that the Celestial Dragon Emperor was controlling him through pain.
Mm-hmm.
If he tries to attack Cathay, the Dragon Emperor does something that will cause him enough agony that he would rather not. So, and the thing that this will be reinforced in the timeline is that the Monkey King is not a genuine ally to Grand Cathay. He is, well, he's a funny character. He's
complicated.
He's complicated.
Yeah.
Which is
and
great.
I love that. It's nice. And yeah, sure, this is a pretty blatant lift, but you've called it the Monkey King already, so how are you not going to continue with your blatant lifts? Yeah, I quite liked it nonetheless. It made me smile.
Yep. 1959, we get when Nagash seizes control of Kemri and trade very suddenly halts. Fine.
Nice to see that detail called out.
Yep. Minus 1800, the construction of the Great Bastion and the Whooshing Compass begins. Mm-hmm. With this, the Celestial Dragon is able to control magic much more than he used to, and the Great Bastion is a near impregnable quarter-of-a-mile-high wall. Cool.
Yeah, and again, I just want to call it out. I've said it, but this paragraph, this is a fine example of one. Take a look at it if you've got the book, and take a little think about how much it says that doesn't need to be said because it's said elsewhere, and how it could have been half the size and still given the same amount of information. I think we should probably stop at this point and get through our super chats, and before we move into the next 2 pages of the timeline.
Sure, let me pour some water if you want to. Here,
I'm not sure where we were, which is why
I got it. Skara, thoughts on Yin Yin's dragon form from the Total War mod, and what if you think it's strong to your liking, imagine her form to be?
I haven't seen it.
So I very briefly looked at it when I saw this.
I'm gonna go have a look,
and it's okay. I don't think it's super great. I think it makes her too aquatic. I don't think she would be that aquatic. Because she is the beast dragon, not the water dragon, not the sea dragon. She is called the sea dragon because the sea's out there, but I don't think she would have aquatic features. Is what I would be saying. I think it's for a mod, it's serviceable. I don't think she's really going to look that much like that.
It's almost like it's a fishman plant.
Yeah, it's very fishman-y to me. I think she'll probably have. I think there will probably be. I think her color is vaguely correct. I think she'll be kind of that sea green aqua color. But I kind of expect her to maybe have like amber horns to tie into her relationship with the Wind of Beasts.
You never can be certain though with the way that they have dealt with the Winds of Magic over in the East, because it sort of doesn't make any sense at all in comparison to what we have for the Western equivalent.
Dinoman. Maybe I have to read it on the page, but to me it sounds like the slash. Oh, I already went over that one. I don't know.
You went over that one.
Yeah. Skylar Martin. I already went over that one too. What the heck? There we go. Sig River Guide. If a noblewoman gave birth to a mutant / beastman in Bretonia, what would a knight do in that moment? Would he be legally allowed or compelled to kill it? Compelled, perhaps. Legally, almost certainly not.
So this is complicated, largely because the answer for this. Yeah, the answers here are wrapped up in a mixture of law, religious belief, and practicality, and ultimately humanity. Because it's very easy to say, hey, I'm going to kill this thing. And then it's very hard to kill a child because this is a baby. And just because this baby looks a little bit different doesn't mean it's an easy thing to do.
A lot of knights, I think, would have a very difficult time murdering a child because even if it's clearly a mutant child, because that really spits in the face of chivalry in a lot of uncomfortable ways.
I mean, if there's ever going to be an event that makes a knight perhaps break their vows and fall, it would be killing a child, and then the horror of what that has done to their psyche. So would they be illegally allowed? That is going to be a matter of great debate, and it would go to court, meaning that bluntly, the local lords and the local rulers are going to be the ones that ultimately decide, or depending upon the level of the nobility here, possibly even the king would be the one to ultimately decide, or Morgana Le Fay at the very top.
Yeah, go read the Knights of Bretonnia trilogy. The first book is literally about this dilemma.
And you'll find that sometimes it'd be ruled against and ruled for, and killing any child of any noble is dangerous. It's just not going to put you in a good place. Because ultimately they're responsible for their own children, not you. And if you go around killing them, then no matter the obvious legal position that you might be in, you might get ruled against, because that's one of the nature of deeply written out laws. It's often left in the hands of the local ruler to decide. They act as the judge, and that judgment might go against you.
Yeah, Donovan, that Metropole thing reminds me of a lyric in the 1998 song "Kiss the Flame" by Jewel. There are nightmares on these sidewalks. There are jokes on TV. There are people selling thoughtlessness with such causality.
Sure.
Or casualty. Sorry, casualty.
Is that casualty? Yeah, you're right. It's not causality. I don't know that song, so
neither do I.
Apologies.
The Wrestling Theater, unrelated, but had the Warhammer world lived an extra 200 years, you think it would have been examples of LATAM nations like my homeland? Oh, like Latin American nations like my homeland of Chile. Okay. I'm going to say this the nicest way I can, because this is something I have as a problem with GW. Which is that GW often runs on a code for the battle game of saying this place belongs to this faction and no one else lives there. And if they do, they're an invading force or a colonial force of another faction. So it's kind of one of those things where, as far as Games Workshop is concerned, as of right now, which I don't personally like this, and I think it actually doesn't make sense for reasons I don't have time to go into right now, there are no humans in the New World except for those that were brought over as slaves by the Dark Elves, or those Norskins, or those that are like in the colonial towns from the Empire, which are obviously colonial inspired. But there's only lizardmen and Amazons.
It's a weird position, and I don't particularly like it. Do I think if somebody actually made a big balanced version of the Warhammer world based upon all of the various factions and cultures that they have, and then organized how the various diasporas and colonial attempts and similar would happen? Yeah, I do think there would be nations somewhat similar, not the same as, but somewhat similar to the homelands of, say, Chile. I mean, sure, that could be a thing. But as it stands, it sort of doesn't exist. And it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and I will always call out the Lustria book for not doing more with this. The Lustria book was a really big disappointment to me on this particular thing.
Yeah, there was an open goal there, and they shot the ball in the opposite direction.
Dumb to explain, she thought casualty meant, casualness, not like, so she was like, it's a casualty, like it's very casual. That's funny. It's almost the exact opposite meaning. Necroplayer, wish I could stay, but working. Andy, if you were Schoolhouse grading these, how would you rate this book versus the previous Cathay books, or just previous overall books, I guess?
It's not that much different. I have been relatively critical of all of them. I think all of them are overwritten, and all of them play hard and fast with the existing lore. But in many respects, I don't criticize for that. I think that's something they're not just within their rights to do. It actually benefits them sometimes. But I would prefer they had really good writing to sustain and explain why they have done those things. And it doesn't have that. So I think they're broadly the same. And how do I rate them? I mean, this one's more of a 3-star than a 2-star. 3 beards.
Frank Trader, a comet exploded here in Cleveland, and now the Bastion falls. These are dark omens indeed. Oh, did y'all have a comet fall? That's fun. Hopefully no one was hurt. Federico, could have been that the first edition suffered from budget issues. Could the situation improve in second edition, depending on the first did? So yes, there is a not secret large amount of discussion about that. The original pitch for the old world was very large, and then it got shrunk significantly, and the sales for it were substantially higher than anticipated. And GW has just kind of been filling space in preparation for second edition, because they ended up releasing a lot of the Arcane Journals faster than originally scheduled. And we're in a really weird scenario, right? Or limbo right now, where they're kind of filling space with these nothing books, which I don't hate. I like the books, but like they're gap fillers. They're filler books.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, we've gone from advancing the narrative with every arcane journal to spinning our wheels for the last IRL year.
Yeah.
Which I think says a lot.
Yeah. To answer your question directly, Federico, could it be that the first edition suffered from budget issues? Yes. Could the situation improve in the second edition depending on how the first did? Yes, it absolutely could. Will it? We'll see.
CS. To me, the Bastion is more of a dam than a wall, which the dragons use to funnel the winds and such, and there's no end to the hordes of chaos, so they call their number when they come close by opening the doors and closing them behind them. So, well, once again, I want to wait till we're later in the book because it specifically talks about this, because I like what it does, but I also recognize that it's not. I like the story it's accidentally telling, not the story the author intended to tell.
We'll get to that.
Dr. Awesome, greetings from Australia. Late but keen to see how Cathay is going. So what would you need for Warhammer Australia? Lizardman Alt Society would be cool, but I would also love a Gromrel Ned Kelly. It's going okay. We're being very harsh, but it's coming from a place of love, and there is a lot of interesting good bits in this. I would rather have it than not have it, would be the way I would put it. For Australia, you would need Lumbria to come back and be like an actual thing.
Some sort of Lumbria equivalent down there would pretty much at least start that conversation, and then you would speak to its indigenous populations, its own name for itself, what this all means, and you could build something super fun down there. What would you do for that? I would sit down with people from there, including, say, for example, B. Sherry, who's a very close Australian friend of mine, and I would sit down with people who live there and say, what is needed to make the best version of this? Because as an outsider, you're always going to miss all the cool stuff.
What do you mean? I can't just describe their cultural identity to kangaroo cavalry?
I mean, you can. I don't recommend it.
Necklaire, I wonder if this humanity lore means that now the term elder species refers to lifespan rather than creation. It should.
Yeah, it's a fun. Yeah, that'd be one way of resolving it. Another one would be to say that humanity is in fact a younger species, and that the elder dwarves and the elves were created some 15,000 years ago, like 17,500, and the humans were about 8,000. So that's a big difference. But it no longer means what it used to mean, which was humanity came after the cataclysm. Now humanity predates it. And most of the oldest empires in the world are actually human. That wasn't the case beforehand, but now it kind of is.
XL1, hear me out. A Cathayan Gelt leading the humans in the shadow of Zhao Ming. Wait, why? We already have Empire Gelt. Do we need a Cathayan Gelt?
I think we don't. Screw that guy.
Nagwal, if Cathayan dragons cleanse chaos, maybe method could be soul binding. Could explain Cathayan unity in a dark way. So, granted, when they're talking about rooting out chaos, the book seems to imply they're very much talking about like the beasts and the land as opposed to the people. Yeah. The people of Cathay in no way, shape, or form in this are implied to be like anything but just perfect people. Because they're perfect people.
But having said that, Nagual, assuming I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I am almost certainly not. I do think that there's possibly something in this tale. The very little that we have about the cleansing shows that it has a toll upon the cleanser, the emperor in this particular case, who gets very tired after doing whatever it is that he was doing and pops up and sits inside his little dragon roost going, I'll have a nap now. But the idea that perhaps the humans that are within his territory are also to a degree cleansed, meaning that there is a greater working of magic through the Wuxing compass going on to try and cleanse humanity is, I think, not an impossibility and could speak to the idea of almost it's really an authoritarian rule from these dragons, which is sinister as fuck. And that could add a little bit of character, but I'm not sure I'd go down that route. You could definitely do something with it if you wish to, though.
Yep. Zero Daimu, is it possible there were whole species who fell to chaos and went extinct during the cataclysm?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can do that easy.
If you haven't got Cataclysm books, you could not just do that. You definitely could do that. And there's a host of potential different old Warhammer shit that you could pull up and say these things died out. So yeah, totally.
Mr. Super Chat, no, I didn't. I just hadn't. We had to pause them because we were.
Well, we paused. We hadn't quite got there yet.
Y'all are taking care of us, and we appreciate that. But we also have to get over the subject material. Bava, Be'lakor was probably stepping on rakes, getting hit in the face with pies, or slipping in banana peels. Yeah, probably.
So again, because I fear I will always be the one attempting to say that Be'lakor isn't that, and you will always be saying, "Oh, of course he is." But nevertheless, Be'lakor during this era is an absolute goat.
Yeah, he's a god. He's an unstoppable god that is too
and the
busy.
Chaos Gods themselves are terrified of what he has become.
Yeah, and to be fair, he was dealing with the Civil War. Explicitly.
And he siphons off like a significant chunk of all four of their powers, and presumably the powers of multiple other gods as well. He is in a very good place during this era, and it takes Tzeentch himself to eventually pull that one down.
Skara, Slan versus Dragon Emperor and his kids, who wins? If you put them in an arena, probably the dragons, because they could get into melee with the Slan, but it would depend on so many circumstances.
If it was that easy, the Slan would have killed the Celestial Dragon Emperor.
Yeah, probably.
You see, that it never comes to arena. The Celestial Dragon Emperor realized the way to defeat the Slan was to not be found by them.
Yeah, stay away from
them.
Dumbhead, okay, between giving the gunpowder to the Sky Titans and dropping the comment on his own people, my interpretation is that the ogres were likely not a minor threat. The evidence here makes me think the ogres had formed into a very large, powerful threat that was actually conquering large parts of southwestern Cathay. Also, since the Monkey King sits between Cathay and India, do you think he could be a mixture of both Sun Wukong and Hanuman, who is a monkey god out of India? So, do I think there is likely going to be overlap between Sun Wukong and Hanuman? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty obvious because
I don't think that would be
that's
bad.
Assuming that the writer is even aware of both.
Yeah. If they're aware of Hanuman, we'll see. And is a big question mark at the moment. I loosely agree that there is definitely some kind of big unexplored narrative with the ogres. The thing that me and Andy were talking about is that we were both a little surprised and very disappointed that this book doesn't address it. It just says he drops a comment on them. And you're
left going,
why?
Such, to me, it felt like this is an event that occurred in the past, so we're just going to write it like it occurred without any thought at all for why. They just copy pasted it from a previous timeline without sitting down and going, "This is huge."
Now, don't get me wrong. Do I have my full gas mask of hopium that I'm huffing on right now? That we're going to get like an Ogre Kingdom's return in 2nd or 3rd edition, and that their Arcane Journal will delve into it? Yes.
Hell yes. And I think your discussion about how you think that the Ogre Kingdoms were a threat is actually the case. It definitively is the case. It's how it's been described. It's been described as that in previous editions as well. The Ogre Kingdoms were threatening Cathay. Absolutely were. Of that, there's no doubt. But the choice to resolve that issue is horrendous. It's basically like dropping 50 nukes because there's an imposing army on the other side.
Why do it on the ogres? Don't hit the Chaos Waste. Don't hit the Naga of Koresh.
Yeah.
Hit the ogres. Why?
Yeah. It seems crazy. And if you have this in your arsenal, why is it only being used once? There's little, it appears, world-building thought behind this beyond it's been written by someone in the past and we're duplicating it. But there is a deep hope that when they eventually get round to it, there'll be a closer examination of what occurs.
Greasus is not that old.
No, Greasus is new in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah. Greasus might be over a century. Check out our upcoming Greasus stream in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. I think it's 2 weeks. Skara, would Tails from Sonic be a mutant due to his tail? I think the fact that he is a walking, talking fox child would probably preclude him to be a Beastman. A mutant before that, but also, yes.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that he's able to fly using his tails in a system where his tail should tangle up, he clearly has some kind of freakish mutation. But anyway, Dr. Awesome, shout out to the toughest army in my Mordheim game, Mr. Ping's Cathayan merchant caravan had Chaos Warriors, vampires, elves, and everyone in line to buy things. What are the chances for merchant lords in Cathay? Extremely high.
Yeah, very high. One of the core details of what Cathay represents to other parts of the world is trade.
Yeah.
And they are constantly described in this book and elsewhere as being at the head of merchant trains and being at the head of over water ocean trade as well. Wherever you go in the world, there are Cathayan junks laden down with Cathayan goods that they are selling and then taking items from wherever it is they're trading with and taking them back to Cathay. And probably the center of trade is both the eastern and western theaters of Cathay, with Yin Yang on one side and what's his face on the other side.
Yeah, I will say, please, Games Workshop, also bring back Borgheim and give us a Cathay warband that is around.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. Skara, Shomuchomek said something cool. He said, are we still talking about tails? He could be a kitsune-like creature that is worshipped for something in the pod. He'd probably look ridiculous unless they made him a little cooler. But sure, you could do that if you want.
I mean, you could definitely revisage him in that way if you wished. Cool. Yep. Right, we're on to the next few pages now. We're going to have to speed up given the hour.
Yeah. So, fast mode. Here we go.
Fast mode. Engaged.
Yeah, time of woes. Things I want to call about this. First of all, the writer didn't try very hard. The dwarfs called this the time of woes. I don't know why the fans are doing the same thing, but sure, why not?
I hate that name.
Yeah.
For the Cathayan version, just so we know.
This one is very heavily sped up because we haven't talked about some of the other books that this takes a long time for Cathay to get this chaos invasion under control. But basically, this is the big earthquake the Salon caused by rearranging tectonic plates, which made the Skaven Doomsday Engine blow up, which shifted them further than intended, which brought an end to the Dwarf Empire and also shattered parts of the Great Bastion. It's cool to see that's mentioned here. We also get note that Miao Ying is wounded horribly. Yeah. Miao Ying actually takes such bad damage that she can't even fight anymore, which is crazy. And this leads Xin Yang to basically gathering up a giant Cathayan army and the rest of his kids. And there's a giant war that presumably takes years to finally push Chaos back behind the wall and repair it.
Yep.
Minus 1357, we get notes of ogre mercenaries showing up or being hired among Cathayans on the east because of pirates.
Just a small aside, really hated this one. No context at all. Why? What's going on? Where's Yin Yang?
This feels like they're wanting to talk about a faction that doesn't exist in the game yet because they're being very vague about the pirates.
So vague.
Like, are they Nipponese pirates? Are they Dark Elf pirates? Are they they're being very cagey about it.
Yeah, I didn't like that section. I mean, if you don't have anything to say, just don't bother saying it and just at a different place say there's ogre mercenaries that have been kicking around for ages because of piratical activity. Didn't need to be in the timeline. The timeline has 0 event attached to this. It's a bit poor.
Yep. Okay, this one's a big one. Minus 1310. Which this is actually a fun reference to the Warriors of Chaos book, which for anyone who doesn't know, there's a hilarious note that one of the old Warrior of Chaos books accidentally got the timeline wrong, where that book said that the earthquake that tore open the Great Bastion happened in 1310, not 1500, which was a mistake. But this book says, both happened. They're aftershocks.
And I'm cool with that.
Yeah, which I'm totally fine with that.
Good.
So there's a big aftershock, chaos rushes through, and it's so bad that Xin Yang calls all of his kids together for a great ritual on the highest peak of the Kunlun Mountains, on Kunlun Mountain, apparently. And here they weave the winds of magic together and they create the first of the Terracotta Sentinels, which is huge because prior to this, it had been my understanding that the Sentinels had been forged in like the mystical events surrounding the Great Bastion. And this says, no, it's a completely independent event at the Sacred Mountain Kunlun, which Kunlun is an interesting place because everything we know about it so far, me and Andy have done a whole stream where we talked about how Kunlun, based on a lot of the lore from Total War, is apparently deeply tied to the Celestial Lions. It's deeply, and the ritual to purify them. It's deeply tied to, it's where the Celestial Dragon Emperor was hatched. It's where he was born, essentially. And now it's also where the Terracotta Sentinels were formed. This is a very special place.
It is. We don't have a lot of detail here, but it's fun. I like this one.
Yeah. Then in 1200, the occult of Xianxi, a notable cult apparently, is formed in the city of Beishai, which is one of the great ports, and Yin Yin, who's more focused on roaming the world and being, she's up to other things. She's out living on the ocean, so she's not home to deal with this.
I felt that this was somewhat pejorative. In that it's very much pushing Yin Yin's rubbish, isn't she? Because she allowed this to occur, where all of the dragons generally located in one place, and the other places are where the cults grow. And they're almost like saying, because she wasn't in this one place, a cult grew. Okay, and it's like, yeah, but she could have not been in any of the other places where cults
which is
grew.
hilarious because her capital isn't even Beishai.
It's a weird one. It's almost like we want to hate on her. Yeah. I wasn't frightfully convinced that was a good entry.
Yeah, and it's
and there's no mention of important people who are involved with this. It's so bland.
Yep. So minus 1163.
Like this one.
Big one.
Big one. This is good.
Vampire fans rejoice. Free from the gaseous control, the vampire Harakte flees Cripple Peak and lands upon the shores of Grand Cathay, bringing with him the curse of vampirism. Under the cover of night, he travels along the eastern coastline, leaving a trail of death in his wake. So vampires are introduced to Grand Cathay.
Jade-blooded vampires.
Yeah, they are hard cannon. Hooray.
Yep. Sweet, love that. We even have a very clear, that's the founder too.
Yep. Minus 1085. This one's just goofy. A tribe of hobgoblins tries to scale a section of the Great Bastion. After beginning their ascent, they accidentally wake up a terracotta sentinel that is resting against the wall, and they get splatted. Hilarious.
This is one of the most pointless entries in the entire timeline.
Yeah, well, this very much reminds me of like the classic timelines from the army books, where there's always like two entries that are just like
but they would attach them to a character. They would say such and such did this and this occurred and they got flattened and it became a myth amongst the hobgoblins. They would always add that little bit of extra character to it. This is bland. There is zero character attached to this. It's just some
fun if this had been like one of the named terracottas, or if there had been a note about like hobgoblins not wanting to scale the wall anymore because they think the whole thing comes alive or whatever.
There's a complete lack of storytelling here, and I found that one pretty disappointing. I loved the idea, and I think the humorous little asides like this are essential to make the timelines interesting to read. I hate the lack of storytelling attached to it. It manages to spend some like 8 lines doing about 3 lines worth of work and also not giving us any character.
Yep. Minus 666. This is a very notable event in like every timeline. Where because 666, so this is when the Chaos Moon Morslip gets really big, and this just reinforces that. So a lot of bad chaos shit happens, and it's bad time for everyone involved. Cool story. Minus 437, we get the Monkey King raids once more into southern Cathay. The Li Dao wants to attack him. We have that building rage, but his father keeps him on a leash. He doesn't let him attack Sun Wukong because his father knows he doesn't need to. He already has the bargaining chip he needs. But Li Dao is slowly but surely getting more and more and more and more pissed as this book goes.
Yep.
Minus 200, the cult of Xianxi grows bigger. This gets so bad that it reaches the attention of the Sea Dragon. Yin Yin, her father, come down, and they do their best to wipe out the cult, but it's a classic Tzeentch cult, and many of them escape retribution.
Yeah, this is an odd one, particularly because we're dealing with human lifespans. This is 1,000 years for a cult build-up. Tzeentch doesn't need 1,000 years.
That's a long fucking time.
Yeah, Tzeentch cults build up like and worm their way into a place within like a decade. But they basically said it took 1,000 years for them to somehow get into Bai Chai, or however you pronounce that. Bai Chai?
Beishai.
Beishai, thank you. Beishai. And it's a bit weird without any real context to explain why it's taken all of this time to do it. There's, a complete lack of storytelling here.
Yeah, it feels like this was supposed to be like Oh yeah, that actually would have been fun. If it had been 999 years, then you could have.
Now we're telling a story.
Really cool
I like that. Immediately, I'm like, we've got something going here. They're attempting to do something. They try to do it on this night, and the cult does something big. But again, no names attached.
Yeah, because that could have happened in 199. Great. It would have been way cooler, and it would have explained why Shin Yang had to get involved. Why does the Celestial Dragon Emperor need to deal with a Tzeentch cult? But if it was like a 999-year ritual, okay, that sounds like a problem.
That sounds big. That sounds awesome sauce, and I love that. But I think that what you bring up there was it Cyresco? I pronounced your name wrong.
Yes,
is a perfect example of what they haven't done with most of their timeline mentions, and that's they've not told the story of why they bothered to include them. They've just said a thing happened, no characters involved, a dragon came along and fixed it.
Man like Pegasus, it says raids, so you can assume the Monkey King and his warriors were killing lots of people.
Yeah, there's going to be death involved until they change the language.
87. Corsair ships plague Grand Cathay. Yin Yin is tasked by a frustrated Dragon Emperor to embrace her role as guardian of the Eastern Province. Though the free-spirited dragon is reluctant to be so chained to duty and responsibility, she agrees to honor her father's wishes. That's an interesting lit. I like this. I like this a lot. It makes her very characterful.
So we've now got a character, and one of the things that the dragons somewhat, they don't lack in character, but they definitely lack in negative traits sometimes. And it shows the Dragon Emperor's frustrations with just Yin Yin. What I don't like is that this is the only dragon that we see the Dragon Emperor being frustrated with, because the rest of them are as bad, if not worse, in each of their own individual theaters.
Something is like way worse.
Like way worse. But we don't get mentions of this because the writer, whomever, clearly wants to put a bit of hatred down on Yin Yin, and that's a bit rubbish.
Yeah, we stand Yin Yin in this house. How dare? But I love that she just clearly is not interested in her.
Yeah, she's got character, and just because Dad wants me to do one thing doesn't mean I have to do it. I've got my own life to lead.
Yep. All right, and then this is the biggest bomb in the entire book. -0. The Astromancers of the Celestial Court observe a twin-tailed comet in the skies above Grand Cathay, a cosmic event that marks the birth of the first of the dragon-blooded, the mortal descendants of the Celestial Dragon's own children.
Now, this is weird for multiple reasons. One, again, it's on 0, which means the comet does not herald Sigmar's birth, as the story of Sigmar states. It heralds his coronation.
Yeah, which
is a weird one.
And me and Andy will be booing it from the sidelines forever.
Yep, totally. Then we flip on to the next one, which basically suggests this is happening. All the dragons are fucking like mad with all humans and have been for the last several thousand years, because the only way they could know it ties back to 0 is that all of them are in a place to impregnate, which means that at this point we get this feeling that all of the dragons have large harems. That are basically there to service them as they wish. And then on this year, they start getting pregnant. It goes against the character of some of these dragons, though. Some of these dragons are very much presented as almost, well, look at Mao Yang. She's distant. She sets herself separate from all of this.
I will say, I wish we had one more sentence saying, like, which dragon had the first kid?
Yeah, exactly. This whole thing just feels like we're going to make an event to tie the Dragon-Blooded Shugogen to... And this is the event, without any thought about the practicalities of how any of this could be at all certain. It's a weird one, a really weird one. And I want to bring this one. The author makes Sigmar as Jesus now. Yeah, kind of. Sorta. It's a weird one. In fact, it's sort of the opposite because it's on his coronation.
Anyway, so this is one of those ones. I wish they had included more text. Like, I would have loved to they should. I feel like the first Shugogen should be named. That's a big deal character. We also never hear about them again, which is also a shame. I feel like they should, their death should also be a big deal.
To bring up this one, Sigmar's dragon-blooded. No, he can't be. He's already born at this point.
Yes.
Just in case there's any concern or worry about that one.
But don't worry, we're going to bring him up again in a second. But what I will say, this is fascinating because it does note that it's basically a cosmic event, so like a miraculous event. So the twin-tailed comet, obviously in Warhammer has caused a lot of crazy stuff. It's supposed to be Sigmar's birth, but whatever. It heralds the arrival of Sotek, the god of the lizardmen. It heralds Sigmar, and now it heralds the first of the Shukengen, which is weird and fascinating.
I'm not against the idea. To be as clear as possible as I can be about that. I am against how they've pitched it because it makes no obvious sense.
We need so much more details.
Or the dragons aren't quite as we imagine them. They are basically large harem-dwelling dragons, or at least one of them is, because they basically got to be throughout that year having sex enough to have had children. And these ancient entities, I think it's quite likely they might not bother for a few years, even a decade or so. How do they tie it down to this single event?
And I think it would have done so much to say which child it was, because that could have given us a hint. If it was like Zhao Ming or Yin Yin, that seems like an accident. If it was Miao Ying or Yuan Bo, that seems deliberate. And it's like, and the other thing is, like, in the stories, we don't know, did the dragons see it coming? Was it a surprise to them? I need to know more. But I don't.
Yeah, there is a complete lack of storytelling here again. The same issues that we've had with some of the previous entries are manifest here. There's no description as to who, why, the ramifications of it. And you might go, well, there's not enough space. Bullshit. There is more than enough space on these pages to just drop in those small little details as one of the dragon kids has a kid for the first time. And everyone's like, what the fuck? There's more than enough space here to tell an interesting story. They don't appear to be interested in telling stories. Whoever the writer is not a storyteller. The writer is just disseminating facts in almost the dullest way possible.
Yeah, especially because from this point onwards, Shukengen apparently are popping out like rabbits.
Yeah.
So something changed in the world. And the writer's like, yeah, I'm not going to expound on it. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, totally weird. And for those of you who follow Lawhammer, you'll know that we've got Shukengen that are older than this. I'll just simply say I already have an answer for it. It's not an issue. My version of what happens with the Shukengen and the horrendous tale that is told because of them is still valid, and I'm pretty cool with it. But this version of it is, I think, fascinating, particularly because Miao Ying, by this point, is already on her way to the Empire.
Yeah, so I will say this, the next year, one, Miao Ying goes over to see Sigmar. And to me, this literally screams Miao Ying has a kid with Sigmar.
It pretty much does suggest that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because why bother doing it the year after? It's a weirdy one, and I don't know if I like it. Because it's another piece of Sigmar centralism, which I sort of hate, making everything about Sigmar. Sigmar's the one who did this. Sigmar's the one who did that. Sigmar's the one who screws Miao Ying. Sigmar's this, that, and the other. And it's just a bit, do you really have to? Can't we tell stories about Cathay, not stories about how the white man over in the Empire is the heart of everything that happens in the world? It's just a bit pish. I would rather have something bigger. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but simultaneously, I fear it may be.
From there, year 200 of the Imperial calendar, Talea and Astalia make their first return from Grand Cathay, which is a nice reference to the old Dog of War army book.
Yep.
This is when, what were those two goofballs' names? Lorenzo and something else. There's a, like, I can't remember their names, but these two goofballs that make the journey overland. And they return with black powder, and it notes that the dwarves are annoyed about it because they didn't want humanity knowing about black powder. Cool, cute, cool, whatever. Though, funny enough, this does actually give kind of a hardish year about when black powder was introduced in the Southern Realms. So there's that.
Yeah, that date's been used more than once, particularly because it's, to cut a long story short, black powder and the old world have a complicated relationship.
Yeah. 1360, Sigmar's realm falls into civil war. Whoop-de-doo. The Cathay goes, hey, y'all should stop. And the Empire tells them to piss off. Kind of hilarious.
I hated that inclusion because it had nothing to do with Cathay.
Correct.
It's like, what's the point of this here? You've wasted a huge chunk of space on something that doesn't matter for Cathay.
1478 is another one of the joke entries. It just talks about a Bretonnian knight. That this is actually a reference, I believe, to an old Bretonnian army book. this timeline section where there is a Bretonian that hears about a land of dragons. He goes off to fight and he dies.
And again, names, details, story, it's completely lacking in it. It's just a knight went off and wanted to chase dragons.
Yeah, 1690. This one's actually pretty exciting for me personally. A lot of us were worried that they were going to get rid of the attempted Cathayan invasion of Southlands. Nope, they have rewritten it, and it works great. They made Astalia a much bigger part of this story than the original. In the original version of the story, it's Cathay that tries to approach from both sides. And to be fair, the original story makes Cathay look like they're idiots because how did they not know Lustria was there? And this story says, nope, they knew Lustria was there. It was Cathay was going to come in from the east, and they made a deal with Astalia, making Astalia much more active in the setting, which I love. I love that Astalia gets a cool call out here. And they come in from the west, and it notes Astalia shows up and is like, hey, we're here to set up colonies. Where's Cathay? And they look over the horizon and see all the stars, which is the typhoon that wipes out the Cathayan fleet.
And in a complete travesty of, again, not doing any storytelling, in the first instance where they could have included Yin Yin and not made it weird, they forget to even include her name.
I don't know why she's not in this. She
oh my god!
Yeah, there should have been a whole thing about how Yin Yin set up this amazing trade deal and was gonna expand Grand Cathay and do all this stuff, and it fails because of the intervention of the Slan.
Yeah.
There's
a cool story in there. Is it even mentioned? No.
1970 or 1979. This doesn't have anything to do with Cathay, really. The Empire of Man falls into bigger turmoil with the election of Magritta. What do you do?
That's an old world detail, which again we're supporting the old world game. I can understand why it's there. Utterly unnecessary for this book, though. Utterly unnecessary.
2000. This one's a pretty big deal. We've known loosely about it, but now we have a hard date of the year 2000. The Celestial Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress leave without reason or warning. They don't explain to any of their children why, and their children are confused and left a little spooked.
This is arguably one of the biggest events in the entire freaking timeline, and it's given short shrift.
Yeah, I don't understand why none of the Cathay books have had that as a focus section.
Yeah, because it's so important. It's such a massive event for Cathay, because it's after this all the dragons are left going, what do I do? Mum and Dad's gone. And they're then left to try and cope with their mum and dad having vanished and them having to rule, and they all disagree with each other. This is a perfect disharmony. The disharmony that's sort of alluded to earlier in the book, but they really skip over it hard.
It's basically leading to civil war.
Yeah,
which we see in the next entry, where 2101 giant horde shows up, attacks the Great Bastion. Miao Yin calls for aid. Only Yuan Bo shows up, and although they win, it notes that the relationship between the other siblings are strained to the breaking point,
which is good. I love that.
Screams civil war.
It does, and I think it's a really good detail. And if we'd had more of that throughout the course of the Cathay book, and showing that Cathay is not this big, perfect area. It's a place that's riven with all manner of different difficulties and lots of different cultures, many of which will be led by the different dragons and what they view as important.
According to these pages, no, it's not.
Yeah, and indeed, it's not in several other places as well. I love the hints that it offers, but I'm disappointed with the execution.
Yeah, 2163, which is 60 years later, without the Celestial Dragon to control the Monkey King,
the Monkey King
starts doing what he wants, and what he wants to do is apparently get revenge and take over. Now, what's interesting is this is not the big one, so there's a big story that's going to come after the defeat of Asvar Kul. It's like in 2340 or something, where the Monkey King successfully will take over the throne. This is him starting his campaign. That's going to be like which is great. And I love that we get here that the Monkey King is also explicitly said to be immortal, which is a huge eyebrow raiser, because what the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
There's a bit of storytelling here. We have an individual, we have a core detail about said individual. You see what they're trying to do, and importantly, the dragon's response is poor. They're being absolutely outmaneuvered because they're too busy bickering. We actually have some loose storytelling here. It's one of the few entries that has a bit of tension in it.
Yeah, and I love that this quite literally shows Li Dao finally gets the opportunity to go after him, and he's getting his shit rocked. Yeah. Like he's being outmaneuvered and embarrassed constantly. And then in 2276, we get the whole thing that basically where we are now. So Yuan Bo takes over Miao Ying's job to protect the Bastion, and Miao Ying goes to the Empire.
So what page are we up to now? We're up to about page 8, page 9, something like that?
Yeah, we just got to page 10.
We've just hit page 10, and has the Bastion fallen?
No, and it's not going to for many more pages.
Yeah, it was at this point, as I hit the end of the timeline, I'm like, what's the book's full title? Are we doing this? Are we not doing this?
This book, honest to God, I consider vaguely false advertising, because the breaching of the Great Bastion, you go, oh, Yuan Bo has to deal with the Bastion being breached. No. This takes place way before, when Miao Ying is still there.
Yeah, the whole thing is just a little bit, oh, really? This should have had a lovely opening sting.
Look at that art.
Yeah.
Oh, the
art.
The Moon Empress looks so cool.
I
love her. She looks terrifying. Oh, I don't know if it's intentional. I genuinely don't. I love how much of her iconography has the Lilith.
I can't believe it wasn't intentional. If it's not intentional, then somebody somewhere has just done an extraordinary coincidental piece of art.
Yeah, like Illuminati type shit. The symbolic relationship between Lilith and the Moon Empress is excellent.
Yep, agreed. Hard and great piece of art. One thing that this book doesn't fail at all is its art. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, the art is all a 10 out of 10. Like,
it's just brilliant.
All right.
Even the sketchier shit is really good.
Yeah. Land of the Dragons. From here, we're gonna smash through a couple things.
We got quite a lot to get through yet. What time are we at?
We don't have enough time.
Yeah, we don't have enough time. Okay, we're gonna have to make a call on this because if you didn't know out there, we're needing to finish at approximately 5:30, which means we've got 20 minutes left, and we have got quite a lot to cover here. We could. I mean, I don't want to make a second part in this because I don't think we've got enough material for a full extra 3 hours. Although the speed we're going through it, we almost could.
Yeah, we probably could, honestly. And worst case scenario, we could always do for next Tuesday, we could do finishing this. And then if we have any time left, we could talk about Adepticon hopes and predictions and stuff for just fun.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so let's do that. That being the case, we're going to do a second stream as we continue on through the breaching of the Great Bastion to make sure that we do cover everything. And I think it is worthwhile because a lot of the material that's about to come is super cool. And is worth discussing.
We'll just keep going, and we'll get through.
It means we can relax a little bit in time to time. We should probably catch up with the super chats before we do that because there's not too many to catch up with here, but there's enough. And then we won't fall behind.
Boom. Super Orlak. It seems like this dragon is really comfortable using cruel methods to keep his borders static. Truly a goodly and all-wise man. You hit a huge nail on the head that I think this book leans into. When we get to, so we're not going to get to this stream, so I will briefly address it because we're not going to get to this stream. The way the whole thing about the Bastion opening to allow people through sounds really dumb initially, but one of the things the book does not state, I want to be really clear, it doesn't state this, but it implies this, is that Miao Ying cares significantly more about protecting the Bastion itself than she does about anything else. Because to put it bluntly, she deliberately allows a genuinely staggering amount of people to die horribly to a chaos invasion. She doesn't evacuate them. And she could. The book literally calls out that Miao Ying could have told her people that she was going to open the gates and let the chaos horde through. And she does it because she uses them as bait. And that is horrifying.
Yeah, there's
I love it.
Again,
it's horrifying.
Yeah, there's again another story here that's not been told. It's one of our favorite things to say. And the story here is that the Great Bastion is more important than the people. And the reason why, I mean, it's hinted at in several places because, after all, the Emperor has sunk significant chunks of his own spiritual energies into said wall. It's an important thing, but we also know that that wall does go down on more than one occasion during certain invasions. So it quite literally gets breached. So there's definitely something going on here, and it's not stated at all inside the book. This is more of a suggestion for future writers to make sure that you cover that, because if you don't, what Miao Ying does is stupid in extreme stupidity.
Yeah, it's
no other way of putting it.
It's stupid and wastes horrific amounts of life for no reason.
For no reason at all.
Whereas if the story ends up being that she cares far more about protecting the Bastion itself, that she's willing to let the people of Cathay die to destroy, like be like, oh look, here's tasty morsels, get away from my wall. That's an actual narrative.
Yeah, there's a story that's potentially being told there, and I really hope that that's what gets picked up. It might not be. We might end up with a completely different situation where they end up with some relatively weak justifications for why she let them through because the wall was going to fall down or whatever, and she comes up with a plan and it all fucks up on the inside, whatever. But loosely, I think having the far colder version is probably better. Suits her personality perfectly.
Correct. She doesn't open the gates, but she deliberately weakens them. Because she wants chaos to take the bait. But it's
where the breach is, because it's breached. It's not just the gates are opened. She allows it to fall, would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah. The snake gate gets smashed open by a bunch of trolls. Skara, now I want Nippon to have Chaos Emeralds. Thanks, Andy. No, bad. No. Listen, GW does not want to fight Sega, all right? Frederick Trader, who is Archaon's favorite musician? Ed Sheeran. Oh my god.
Friend or traitor, you made me laugh.
Yeah, that one. Okay,
love that one.
Genuinely funny. That is a good. Well done. Well done. That is an
good goofy joke.
Funny
that
joke.
made me laugh.
That's a casual. First Shukagun is the child of. So it's Shinzu with an S, not Zenzu. The daughter associated with Hope. 500 bits. Okay, I'm going to tell y'all a secret that's going to suck. It's not really a secret. I'm going to tell y'all a fact. You're not going to like it. I'm warning you now. You're going to hate this, and it is a fact. I'm sorry. I have had a good amount of conversations, and I've had a conversation on stream with Andy Hall about Shinzu. And he very, very bluntly told me this, which is that Shinzu doesn't exist as far as GW is concerned. Games Workshop was approached by Creative Assembly, and Creative Assembly said, hey, we want to make a narrative for the Cathay players. Can we use one of the Dragon Kids that y'all don't talk about? And GW said, okay, sure. We'll let you use one of them, but she can't be visually depicted and she can't show up. And they said, okay, cool. Shinzu is a Creative Assembly character. She is not a Games Workshop character, is basically the TLDR.
Having said that, though, that makes her a Games Workshop character. So this is a character they could pick up at any point and use.
They might decide to use her.
Which they might.
Yeah, but I highly suspect she will never be used. No, it's canon. Like, she does exist.
Okay, I'm going to bring that one up. Yeah. So let's be as clean as we can about this. Canon just simply means it's part of the published work. Is it in Games Workshop's canon? It's in one of the licensees' canon of work. That is true. Is it an official part of Games Workshop's main storyline? Nothing is. Nothing is canon. The only thing that matters to Games Workshop is whatever release they've got coming out next and telling the story of that release, either well or not well. And sometimes they'll draw upon older things, and sometimes they'll say those older things no longer exist. There is no pure version of Warhammer that is real or is true. And when something comes from a licensee, a licensor, pardon me, someone like Creative Assembly or Cubicle 7, or indeed someone who makes a mug, all of those things are less canon in some respects than something that's made by the studio, in this case, by Games Workshop. And here, Total War is about as far from canon as you can get as far as they're concerned, while simultaneously is super popular, so they will use it as much as they can to hopefully draw upon its large audience. But they will repitch it and reforge it as needed.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, like, it's canon until it isn't scenarios.
Sure. For your own games, everything's canon that you like.
Yep. Yeah, Games Workshop can't tell you how to interpret the lore or run it at your home game. They can't do that. So yeah. Anyway, Gnivel, whitewashing an emperor, please, a communist gov. What?
To please whitewashing an emperor to please a communist government. I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
Okay. I'm assuming
as in the emperor.
I'm assuming you're trying to say, are
Like
they making? I don't know. I don't know what the whitewashing in this sense.
Yeah, they are definitely. There's a certain amount of whitewashing going on there, I think.
Yeah. If you're trying to say, are they trying to make Cathay like really shiny and noble bright to appeal to the Chinese audience by making them seem like the ultimate good guys? I don't know. I think that's an accusation you could level. I don't know if that's the case, but I think it's not an unfair accusation.
Yeah, fair.
Gaston, part of the myth of Wukong is his ability to shapeshift.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances he is also from the moon like the Empress, not related, just the same race? Personally, I think it's going to be far more likely that he is related to the quote-unquote gods of End, because we also have a seemingly material god with Kamau, the tiger god.
Yep.
And if Wukong is an immortal physical being, he kind of sounds like an immaterial god.
Yeah, I think that's quite likely. But having said that, though, Gaston, yes, what you say is true. And yes, what you say could definitely land. Not necessarily the same race, but very possibly coming from Mansleep. That would be a symmetry and an assonance that does make sense.
Skara, how would the dragons react to a Kitsune god / entity upon if it is not a god but similar? Would they try and kill the same or no? Honestly, I would say we don't know very well. Total War goes very out of its way using the lore they were provided by Games Workshop to portray the Cathayan or the dragons as deeply, deeply anti-god to the point that they will try to destroy them. There is a part later in this book where it talks about the more rural parts of Cathay and that there are people in the more rural areas that do things they're not supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And
disharmonious even.
Yes, and I believe in I think it's in Dawn of the Storm Dragon. Me and Andy talked about that there's notes that there are spirits and things within Cathay that are acknowledged, but by like the rural folk, but not by the dragons. So I would guess they would probably not react positively, but I don't know if they try and kill it. Yeah,
I think that's an entirely fair assessment of it.
Krimgelto, I broke the lame Bastion with searing doom. Thought I'd fly in here and tell y'all to eat shit. Eat shit. Thanks, Krimgelto.
Appreciate it.
Fuck you too. I love our auntie. He's such a good part of the community. We love Krimgelto, the little bastard. I'm pretty much out of time. We got to wrap this up.
We're going to wrap this up here. Okay, so a few things to say. First, thank you all so much for coming along. I've actually really enjoyed this one. For all this may sound like we're relatively negative and down on this book, because we are stressing much more the Cathayan book than we are obviously the Chaos Marauder book. I would like to make sure that we are quite clear that I'm not. I like this book. However, I am not going to withdraw from criticizing where I think criticism is definitely earned. And in this case, there's a lot of it, because much of the book is written without any sense of narrative or any sense of joy in use of the English language. The English language is used in the most blunt and barely detailed ways that sometimes you're just left going, it just needs an edit. Now, that's not to say that the writer can't do this or shouldn't be allowed to write more. They absolutely should, because practice makes perfect. This book is got all the right bits in the right order, and there's lots of cool in there. It just needs a bit more oomph, which is one of the reasons why we're not saying we don't like this book. We do like this book. It's got lots of cool new ideas and lots of cool phrasing for them, but the lack of storytelling is sometimes deeply depressing, because you're left reading through some of the coolest entries going, why should I care? And that's because there's often no vehicle through to understanding the empathy that you should perhaps feel for these characters and the stories you're attempting to tell. So when we go on to the next one, we're going to be discussing all the rest of the book after the timeline. And there's quite a lot of book to come.
Yeah. I want to reinforce what Andy said, that it's easy to watch the stream and think like, oh my God, they hated this book. No, this book excites me. Very, very much. And because I'm so excited, I want it to be as good as it can. And I fundamentally love it, but it also has a ton of flaws. But to be completely fair, if I went over and I picked up the 8th edition Lizardman Army book, which I loved, I would be just as brutal to that book as I am to this book.
We're critical fellows. We can't help ourselves.
Yeah, and it's because it's the only way it's going to get better. I don't know if anyone of relevance watches these. I hope they do, and also hope they don't, but mostly hope they do. Of that, it would be really, really nice if there's someone that's able to watch this and go, you know what, they're right. We could do better.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it would require spending tons of money or some Herculean effort. It would just require a little more care and a little more caution. And that's all.
This is like the parts we've covered so far is 3 days away from being edited into something lovely.
Yeah.
Just 3 days. It's not a great deal of work.
And with that, we got a couple of little last super chats here. Federico, do you guys think Games Workshop will make Nippon rulers like the nine-tailed fox or any other transforming beast? How interesting would that be? I have no idea how they would handle Nippon. To be honest with you, I think GW is vaguely terrified of Nippon, like they're terrified of Araby, but for different reasons. I think they desperately want that Japanese market as big as it could possibly be, and Nippon would be the biggest attempt to grab it, though it's doing relatively well, Warhammer products over there right now. But Japan has so much soft power, and so much of its culture has spread out to worldwide because of anime and manga and all this stuff, that it's really easy to fuck it up.
It really is. And to do an Orientalist version to discuss what we were discussing earlier.
And there's a lot of things that people would want to see that they wouldn't, frankly, be able to fit in. They're just not going to be able to fit in everything everyone would want.
Yeah,
like you might be there going, "Well, there better be a nine-tailed fox entity," and someone else is going to go, "That's stupid. They should focus on samurai shit." Another guy's going to go, there's going to be another guy that says, "No, it should be all Oni creatures," and another guy's going to say, "No, it should be spirits." And like, there's so much. And trying to compress it into the Warhammer world to Warhammer-ify it is kind of a nightmare task. I could understand.
Indeed,
why there's
I would go further on this one, and I would say it's as large a task as it would be to create the entirety of the old world if you wanted to do it justice. And they've already done that. There's loads of different factions in the old world.
Yeah.
And that's what Nippon would need. And that's one of my issues with Cathay. It doesn't have any sense that it's actually composed of all manner of different peoples and different versions of how things work, and all of the myths have just been sanitized into 2 or 3 troop types, and that's what they'll end up having to do with Nippon, because that's largely what Games Workshop does. But when it comes to Japan, something that the Western audience in particular is far more aware of, they're going to be far more critical in turn, because they'll be able to say where they've got things wrong. Chinese culture is not very well known by the vast majority of the people in the West. So anything they do will be given a, "Oh, that looks awesome." And because they're so starved of anything Warhammer facing for a Chinese facing audience, they in turn go, "Well, this is better than nothing, isn't it?" So it's landed relatively well. I'm not convinced Nippon will have such an easy landing zone.
Yeah, but I hope they do it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
Skara, I want Yin Yin to step on me. No one will know. And on that, we hope
I think we should say goodbye.
I'm just going to leave that one on screen. Thank you all so much. Unfortunately, I do have to dip out. I believe, I'm not sure exactly when, but I believe Andy's side of the world has their daylight savings coming up relatively soon.
We do.
So
and that'll solve all of our problems with timing.
Yeah, so there will be a shifting of stuff timeline wise. So just keep an eye on that. But be sure to keep an eye out for more stuff. I wanted to announce this. I'm going to put out some stuff about it later. This Saturday is going to be a particularly notable episode for the 40K guys. They're going to be covering Commissar Yarrick, especially in
Yarrick.
All of the him returning.
He's back.
Because his death was greatly exaggerated, apparently. But as part of that, I wanted to announce I'm going to be doing a giveaway as part of it. Where the fuck did I put it? There it is. Because we'd love for y'all to show up and check them out and give the show a chance, all that stuff. So I'm going to be giving away this thing.
Hey, cool.
Which is a Tempestus Scion Joy Toy figure that I got from GW for some reason. So I'm going to be giving that to someone that actually wants it instead of it just sitting in collecting dust in my office. So please consider showing up for that. But me and Andy will be back on Sunday with something. I've sent him a proposed schedule, but I don't know if we're going to do that yet. And on Tuesday next week, we will be finishing this.
Yeah, we will. And I'm kind of looking forward to it because it's a fun one. I really like the book. So until then, we will see you all later. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.